You know, when you win a BO1 over a top region, act like you belong there. Don't celebrate like it's the fucking, you've just won the Battle of Independence, like the fucking, oh, 1772, oh my God, we defeated them! Like, because guess what? It makes you look like a little shit heel who ain't meant to be there. Meanwhile, you know, when G2 beat them, they were like, it's cool that another one of our lineups beats Koreans. I wonder if we can do a bit more. Like, exactly. This is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight.
Also, subscribe to our channels. Also, check on Spotify. I know a lot of you guys like listening on Spotify. We have a new Spotify channel that has video
as
on
well.
it. It's video now on Spotify, so you guys can watch however you want. That's right. We're part of a pilot program at Spotify, so one of the very, very few podcasts that is now on video on Spotify. Go ahead and watch it there if you want. If you have been watching on Spotify, you're going to have to sign up for the new channel, guys. Old channel and a new channel. I will be deleting the old channel eventually, be putting up a little announcement on there for those of you guys who want that. But until then, go check it out on Spotify as well. So follow all our shit, please. It really does help us a lot. So thank you.
And helps you.
That helps you be informed.
Just do it for selfish reasons.
We're also going to have some new calendaring tools for you guys soon too, which will be available on YouTube and Twitch in the description. They will help you add our show live times to your calendars, whatever calendar you want. Or you can sign up on our Discord and get a Discord bot notification when your shows go live. So all these options in order to keep up with us, trying to make it as easy as possible for you guys. There you go. So we are going to proceed now by talking about some MSI Rumble Stage. Finally, we got some good games. We got the, of course, expected whiplash of people who have difficulties.
I couldn't handle it, mate.
Because obviously difficulties understanding best of ones.
Remember, I was floating in and out of League and CSGO depending on the days, Monty. So every time I would come back into League and I would be getting updated on the games, because obviously they were like early in the morning for me, so I was watching them later in the day. I would be watching the VODs and looking at all the threads, and I was like, fuck, it was only yesterday they were saying G2's unbeatable and they're going to be the best. Fuck, and then EG's shit, and then what? Now T1's, they have to end and break the team. And Bob, then the next day RNG's like, oh, fuck, I can't do it, mate. Fuck, I've strained my neck so hard. The whiplash, can I have a seatbelt, please? A real format. Guys, I get it, sort of, because it happens in Counter-Strike as well. It happened at the major when you have the BO1s there. The problem is this. Somehow the human brain, even knowing this is only one instance, because the one instance is the totality of that match, you can't not think it is everything. And whoever wins is the king. Whoever loses is a fucking pauper and a shitter. Even though, indeed, as I just said, the next day, reversal of fortunes, who knows? And so there, as I say, the narrative whiplash has been fucking mental on this one, Monty. And in fact, here's the part I don't understand. This is why League doesn't work when you do round robins and League formats, as in the game League of Legends. It doesn't work for this reason. History will only show the end of the Rumble stage, and that will just be it, and it will be, right, oh, EG, they ended up like just all right in fourth, and then like, oh, and RNG just ran away with it completely, and T1 was all right. No, you will never know the story of that Rumble stage. Unfortunately, it really was a soap opera, and day to day it was like a K-drama, mate. It was mental, wasn't it?
I mean, this is what people like, and people also ignore the fact that MSI, even among League tournaments, is kind of unique, because you play 16 best of ones, or 18 if you're RNG, right, or 19 I guess in their case, within a 2-week period. So like you are going to have upsets within the best of one format. Yeah, it's like an entire split of games, guys, in 2 weeks. At least if you're in LEC or LCS, right? And it's very difficult to not drop games during that, especially with games being played on an entirely new patch with an entirely new meta, international metas colliding for the very first time. There are going to be hiccups from basically every team. And we've seen this many times at MSI and Worlds, where many teams that win do not end up in first place in their groups or within the Rumble stage of MSI. And it is really difficult, especially for teams that don't typically play best of ones. Remember that the 2 winningest regions literally only play best of ones at international competitions, so they're not exposed to this format at any other point in time. So it becomes really, really hard for them, I think. Now, obviously, T1 hasn't been performing up to standards, which we'll get into with our guest Ox here in a little bit. But you can't really make a lot of...
means never lose a game. You understand, right? That's exactly. This narrative is, I know exactly.
They still did go 7-3.
They kept 7-3. That's pretty good stuff, by the end. Because like I said, the narrative around T1 was the craziest when I kept coming back. Like, dude, it was like every day the fire was getting higher and the whole building was going to... And then at the end, it was all just fine. Like, what? So in the end, there's cruised out in second still. Oh, it's all okay, right? Fucking hell, boys. You guys made it sound like Joe Marsh had to like fire everyone in T1 and like sell half the players.
Oh, I think the other thing that is true about this event is that we also had more meaningless best of ones at the end. Like what should have been really exciting, which it would have been T1 versus RNG. Now it probably wouldn't have been exciting even if it mattered because they had both qualified already for the playoffs, and they probably don't want to show a lot of what they had been planning. They did play a meaningless game that T1 ended up victorious in. But it is of course, the classic Riot format anticlimax where we just play a bunch of nonsense games that don't matter. We had it in the group stage of MSI. We have it again here where, again, we have so few international tournaments, and it is a crime that T1, one of the matches we see between T1 and RNG just doesn't fucking matter, I guess.
Yes.
So
by the way, one of my favorite moments of Whiplash, because I also like to, like judge the phase when it transitions to the next Whiplash angle. My favorite one was this day where it literally for about 3 hours, the NA people were talking as though EG was what G2 was 3 days ago. They've cracked the code. They're destroying people. By the way, this is how you know how desperate for a fucking crumb NA is. Theon talked about that BO1 win over T1 as though that was like, those stories where like Cyril like beats all the Koreans and wins like a fucking IEM or something like, it was a BO1 on 35 ping in the most scuffed tournament ever in a meta that doesn't exist and is artificially existing. And then also, by the way, I've had to hear everyone, now I'm being told like by the LSs of the world, like you're going too far in the drafts here, boys. Like, what drafts? We're in the most alien scenario ever for drafts and what's going on. Like, you're talking like this is an established meta from 3 months and these guys are morons because in the 2-day transition, they haven't picked exactly the comp you want with these scenarios where no one's playing. I'm like, this is mental, boys. The amount of input, it's like we've all gone crazy from the signal noise, haven't we? It's scrambled our brains because the AG one was the funniest, Monty, because obviously, because technically it was possible that like G2 could still not make the playoffs. NA managed to crow and brag and crow and brag, and then by the end of the same 24-hour period, they were below G2 anyway. What a clown fiesta this fucking game is, Monty. This League of Legends I'm watching. What is this?
Also,
it's
I don't think that if you're EG, you should have been taking like a lot away from that game because you did get dumpstered in the early game. And sure, here's the positive for EG. They returned to a similar style of play that actually did see them have domestic success. When their backs were against the wall, they kind of played not ideal meta champions in order to play into their own style, which I think is great. I think it's great. Yeah. And I think it does work for their strengths in the mid and late game. But honestly, if T1 doesn't continue to mega throw Baron fights, like they don't win that game. It's not a good sign when T1 is absolutely smashing all these teams early because they can do it with almost any composition, which should strike fear into the hearts of people who are not T1 fans who are cheering for somebody else to win, because as soon as they figure out the right compositions to play, which I think that they are back on it, as it were. I think they actually have figured out a lot more in the last few days about a way that they can play their style within this meta without resorting to very strange, like, split push compositions that were not working for them. They're not going to run that shit in the playoffs, guys, I don't think, unless they do it in like game one to see if it works. And then if they lose, they transition into something else. But this is a team that has an absolute monstrous early game, can get huge gold leads. You know, in spite of the fact that they went 7-3, so they weren't even the top team during this group stage, they still have what? They still have a gold differential of number one in the tournament at 3,800 gold at 15 minutes. In League of Legends, that should be a game over. If you're averaging that much up that early on, that is absolutely enormous. So
the only thing that made me a bit sad about the EG storyline is this. This is why, unfortunately, League being these one tournament that out of the middle of nowhere, you hope the right teams make it or they don't get any like continuing chapters to a storyline. Right after I had to sit and see Jojo Pion, the ex-Fortnite player, beat Faker, then we're just going to get to have Fion articles for the next 6 months, because here's the problem. He will now never play Faker in the playoffs, will he? So he will lose to RNG, probably not even gracefully. I wanted so badly for that to be T1 versus EG in that matchup in the semi-finals, because I tell you what, Faker and T1 would have come out of that like a fucking demon and destroyed these motherfuckers. I'm telling you right now, I would bet dollars to donuts, mate. I would absolutely. I think they would have murdered them in that scenario. I think they're just lucky that they get to play RNG, and even then they're going to lose, are they? Let's be real. They just are.
Yeah. I mean, I think EG obviously very low chances of doing anything in the playoffs. Whoever they faced, because remember, like, I wouldn't want to face T1 or RNG in a best of 5, and then also you have to consider that they still haven't beaten G2 in a game this tournament.
By the way, Monty, here's where I've changed. I was talking about this before, but just keep track. Just watch how it's different. You'd expect me now to do a classic impassioned rant where I go, like, and don't bother telling us, you know, that EG, why are we so cynical and negative and why can't we support NA? No, guys, do tell us that. Write it all in the comments now. Make Reddit threads about it. Make a thing why Thorin and Monty are so biased against EG and they hate NA. Give us all the... I won't read any of that shit, you moron. You're just doing free work for me, publicising my opinion and making me the most relevant Skip Bayless-esque lord of fucking sports takes of all time. Because you know what? You know how you all hate Skip Bayless? You can't fucking stop talking about him, can you? You have to tune in to know why he's wrong. That's what you're doing now. That's the world I'm envisioning now. So just like, you know how sometimes a musician will look down upon those plebs that have come along with his shitty band t-shirt on and he'll go, you know what? I have so much disdain for you. Carry me like a fucking Egyptian pharaoh across your arms as I surf you, you fucking shitters, and then deliver me back to my stage, my God Emperor throne, and don't ever attempt to come up it or my security will beat the fuck out of you. That's what I'm going to do now with the fan base. Obviously, all you long-time viewers, you're in an enclosed circle where it's a different relationship. I'm talking about the general populace at this point in time. So that's what it's going to be like. Do get angry at us. And you know what? I'm going to give no disclaimers. I'm going to apologise for nothing. I am discrediting EG. They caught a bunch of throws. They drafted very shrewdly, which they always were going to do. By the way, it makes me wonder what would happen earlier on in the tournament if they'd gotten the fucking drafting coach through, etc. They've done what they could within the circumstances. And you know what? The clock struck 12. The fucking carriage turned back into a pumpkin. The carriagemen are rats again. And you know what? I could be Theo in this case, I guess, running around with his fucking narratives. And now you're going to have to actually face the music, which is, you know what? I don't know the rest of the analogy. What happened in Cinderella after that? I wasn't reading after
that. By the way, guys, the only team from a major region that they beat was T1, and that was it. They went, what, 0-6, and then 0-2, and then 1-1. So they went 1-9.
Missing something.
They went 1-9 against other major regions.
How are you going to talk shit on G2 and then lose twice to them? Am I missing something? Has shit talk changed since I've been in the game? Like, look, it's good, by the way, to set up the game. You hype the game. But understand, you have to beat them. Like, your logic was, when we beat T1, that's like when Homer joined the Stonecutters and he goes to Barney and he goes, look at this chair I got. And they go, well, yeah, we got him as well. He's like, jealous? That's it. Like, you got him as well. We already did that. What you and also, by the way, here's all you need to know. I'll say this one, and do get triggered by this. Do write comments. Are you ready? Are you ready for the ultimate thing that's going to... This shit-eating little grin I've got on my face as I say it to you, Americans. There's a little beak face. Yeah, it's my little emoji right there. You ready? This is going to drive you up the wall. You know when you win a BO1 over a top region, act like you belong there. Don't celebrate like it's the fucking, you've just won the Battle of Independence, like the fucking, 70, oh my God, we defeated them. Like, because guess what? It makes you look like a little shit heel who ain't meant to be there. Meanwhile, you know when G2 beat them, they were like, it's cool that another one of our lineups beats Koreans. I wonder if we can do a bit more. Like, exactly. Right, okay, I've just triggered everyone more. You can continue with
the speaking of triggering everybody, if you guys didn't watch the CS Major, Thorin actually pulled off the incredible feat of having signs in the audience about him all the days in the stadium of the major, despite not even being there, which is something I have actually never seen that for any like caster, desk, like analyst.
I don't think even all the players in the matches had signs. This is how silly we're getting now. Like, I don't even know if there was an electronic sign or like a bloody rain sign. Like, there's signs about me every day though, and it just led to all those classic jokes. It's like everyone says I'm irrelevant. All signs suggest otherwise. I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, little banger. Just popped it out there.
Trending on Twitter too. Then having the signs actually. I mean, it's free. It's free fucking real estate, man. It's free advertising.
It is. Absolutely, mate. It absolutely is. I just have an entire South American country called Brazil that I just exist rent-free in. You know, I am Emmanuel Goldstein in that state. Don't get me wrong, Straight Fire reference. But understand, I am, like, because basically, if you don't know, in CSGO, like, if you think TSM fans are bad, they're bad in League, and only then, even in the West, like, T1 fans are way worse, don't worry. But obviously, like, the Brazilian CSGO fans are on another level. Like, you don't even know. Like, essentially, the joke is, my Twitter is their, like, whatever it was, the 3 minutes of hate. You know, like they just come online, tell me to kill myself. You've fallen off. Oh, all the list. Don't worry. Thing is, though, this is where I've done this transformation. You're gonna have to just wait and see. I've sort of figured out how to make their hate fuel me, though. I'm like Blanca in the Street Fighter movie. I've made that like that's like the steroids that are gonna make the beast that is Thorin. I'm making all the references right now. Yeah,
the Street Fighter.
Remember,
movie.
he was watching all the violence. He was having all that like adrenaline shot, steroids pumped into him. They used to beast when he came out, wasn't he? That's me now.
And he's Brazilian, right? Is it Blanca
he was,
Brazilian?
Yeah, true. You're right. I think he was a Brazilian character. Yeah, I think in the movie, I think he was American because he was like a bit Giles from. But you're right. The character in the game is, I believe he is Brazilian. So yeah, basically, don't worry. Like I said on Twitter, just pray thanks to the heavens you are here to witness the second great banter era of Thorin. You remember 2014 to 2016? It was fun, wasn't it? It was a lot of fun. Time for the fucking renaissance, boys. And I tell you what, if you thought I was bad before, I'm a be insufferable. Now I've like doubled the Twitter followers from then. And I've also, here's the thing, you might have noticed this, Monty. I only get in fake drama now. I've figured out how to say the same thing and never hit the keyword that gets you in trouble. I can even make the edgiest jokes. I made a joke the other day that essentially was about Russia nuking Ukraine. But the way I did it, you'll never know what the tweet is, mate. You'll never catch me. I did it in a way where you'll never be able to get to it. So I'm also untouchable, which is a great fucking thing to say, knowing the way that our careers have gone.
You know,
I will the universe to come at me. Come on, come at me.
You know, I think the thing that ESL should do at the Rio Major, I mean, I know we're going to Counter-Strike territory, but I do think it would be hilarious for them to announce you as a guest and make people think that you're in the arena and then just pipe you in via like a video feed just to make the crowd go insane.
That's true.
The booing would be amazing. I think
the
if they were smart, they would do that.
You have to understand, I will never do work for that pack of murderers, nor the Brazilian fans.
Yes.
Anyway, whatever. Back to League of Legends. We're back
to League of Legends.
Although, by the way, if you noticed, I brought this up on the past one. Listen, I know, here's the secret to tournaments. Like, once you're within the context of the tournament, you get into the little narratives and the back and forth, and you enjoy some of the games. I've noticed the sentiment each time I keep coming back from the CSGO Major to League to get back into things. People are still on that theme of like, it's underwhelming the tournament though, and people aren't really fucking with it still. Even, by the way, with all I think it's only the crazy upsets of the last few days that sort of brought people back out for a moment. It feels like that's another flaw with the format, Monty. If there has to be an upset for the format to be good, the format's got a flaw, you know what I mean? Like you saw that in CSGO, by the way, the best team, if it wins every match, I'll be loving it. It's an amazing game.
But see, that's the problem when you create formats where like the 3/4 of the tournament, or I guess it's 2/3, so 2 out of the 3 weeks of the tournament are more boring than the last week of the tournament. They've designed a tournament format where the maximum amount of hype is the smallest amount of time. And that's certainly somewhat unavoidable in any kind of like playoff format. Like the last section is always going to be the most enjoyable, but there's just been a lack of good games. And if there hadn't been upsets, this Rumble stage would have been quite boring as well. And so like you say, you shouldn't have to rely on the existence of upsets to make your tournament format exciting. You should have a format that creates excitement in and of itself.
Yes.
The thing about it that people will say was like, oh, I like to see these upsets. If you create a good format, there can also be upsets that will be as exciting or potentially even more exciting. But people just look at this and like, well, I liked it when G2 started off, sweeping the group. They're into that, right? Which was fun, but at the same time, that shouldn't be a requirement to make the tournament exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Also, I want to know this, right? We won't, obviously, the problem is I assume we're trying to save a bunch of topics to talk about with the guest, right? So how do you want to, what should be the guideline and what line not to cross so we don't veer into that too much? What do you think we should do?
In terms of?
Like, we're not going to talk about all the teams right now before he comes on.
That's true. Well, we can actually get him on right now, as a matter of fact.
Do that then, yeah.
So, and by the way, guys, remember, go over to esportsbet.io. The World's Prediction Series is going on right now for DJT. You guys do a deposit there. You can get 50x back, deposit some crypto, or you can get it for free just by signing up and continue to play on the site through the end of the World Championship. You can win up to $300,000. They're giving away $10 million, up to $10 million in total. And you guys can check out our show's Competitive Edge on League of Legends and CSGO, where we talk about some of the odds every week. We've actually been doing extremely well. Thorin actually smashed the CSGO predictions. He predicted every single match right, starting in the quarterfinals before any quarterfinal match has been played all the way through the end. You'll notice that we did put a flyer on NIP because the odds were very good.
Sure.
But in terms of who you thought would win, you correctly predicted FaZe would win the major. You correctly predicted all the quarterfinal winners, semifinal winners, everything. So
in the final, FaZe was an underdog. People will tell it now. They always knew Monty. After the way Na'Vi played in the semis, everyone said Na'Vi was going to win. So shut up, you idiots. I've got the receipts. That's the difference. That's why
they
I
also
like
had better
odds
odds too. FaZe had better odds, right?
That's what I mean.
Technically,
they were the underdog.
Yep.
They were like the 2-1 underdog. Yeah.
All right. So check out those shows. We're gonna get Ox on in just a minute. So hold tight.
Right, we're obviously back with our guest, which is Ox. We actually had him on. Was it actually the last episode?
No,
was it 2 weeks ago? No, I'm sure we had you on a show. Oh no, I suppose you can side select. Right, that's what I've confused.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Show with Rich. There we go. I wondered why Monty had booked you again. I thought, bloody hell, his Rolex is getting a bit weak now. I know you're popular again that long, Monty, but okay, yeah, he was actually on the other show, so fair enough actually. Then I have some inside info Monty won't know here, which is, even though traditionally, obviously, you're supposed to big up the RNGs, when you were actually very reasonable. Like, actually, I thought you actually tempered it that they weren't the favourite. T1 is supposed to be this unbeatable for. Here's the obvious question then. Now's your chance. Look, they're fucking weak now. They were almost at restarts, if you know how the T1 fans are, mate. So the question now is this, Ox. Are you ready to say RNG will win MSI? Are they the best team in MSI? The stats say they are.
I think it's closer than it was before, but I still think that T1 probably has the edge.
Correct opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. When I came on that show before, I just come out of we'd come out of the playoffs for the LPL, and RNG had very sort of major issues that were quite apparent. And I think those issues have resurfaced. I do think that a lot of the teams in MSI can't really punish those issues nearly as much as they were punished in the LPL playoffs. But assuming T1 hits their form, which they I think they have started to kind of move away from where they were initially in the Rumble stage. I think they're going to be they'll have the edge, but I expect a series to be close between them, and I expect them to be in the finals together.
Because that's the problem. Is if you notice, it's going to sound like we're really cynical, right? Because there's a lot of fans just believe in the dream, the hype, whatever. But also, people just want history. What I think people hate about history is the idea that it doesn't repeat. But I like their line that it rhymes. There's always certain trends play out again and again. Spoiler: I even did. You can go back and check on Twitter. Right when T1's burning down and all the fans are bloody saying you have to fire everyone. This is the wrong decision. And why did we cut Teddy? Every bloody angle that we're going to. The drafts are all terrible. I even said on Twitter, I expect T1 will just course correct and probably even stomp everyone in the playoffs. Because guess what? I've seen this movie before. I've seen this one before, boys. And what do you know? At the end, they're coming up and then they even win that last game. I knew this would happen, boys.
Wow, the last game,
it didn't matter. First.
It didn't matter.
No, but tell you what, it did to T1, mate. If they'd have lost that would have been the end of the world for their fans. It doesn't matter. That would be the end of the world for the fans. You have to win that one just for the Korean pride, in my opinion. You can't get 2-0'd by RNG. So that's the thing. It didn't matter for the tournament, but I do think low-key, that was the one. Also, bear in mind, you probably beat in the final. That's the little needle right there. It's when we played you in the last game, though. We beat you, though, didn't we? So I think everything is primed for a banger final, but I have to say, for me, still, it's the final boss is T1, and let's see if anyone can beat them.
Yeah, I think the issue with T1, and for those of you who are looking at RNG at home, as we said coming into this tournament, RNG is capable of winning it. You're just trying to figure out what are the odds of them winning this event. And player for player, they kind of are worse across the board, except for, I would say, Gala, especially with Gubiyoshi's performance this tournament, which hasn't been great overall, right? And so, and I think you see especially big gaps at top and jungle between these two teams. And the issue is certainly Gala is capable of absolutely carrying these games. But the problem is he often is going to have to do it from a deficit. We saw that within the first game which was, I would say, the real game that these two teams played in the best of, because we only got one real game that actually mattered, where ostensibly RNG, even if T1 really wanted to win that last game, I don't think RNG gave a fuck about that last game.
I don't think they bothered that. Obviously, the bottom place, yes, for sure.
But even in the first game that they played, it was T1 again with a big advantage. And I think the problem when you think about beating T1 is that it has always been true in League of Legends that early gold leads result in massive win percentages. Like at
Probably
times,
like 70% or something, I'm going to guess. It's one of those type of stats, right?
I mean, usually I would say the gold lead at 15 minutes is indicative of, depending on the meta, like a 70 to 80% win percentage. It's absolutely enormous.
I think you just remember the times it doesn't happen. That's why people always think it's so up in the air. It's like you just remember the exceptions when someone does the comeback, don't you?
And it's been, you know, outside of some teams like 2015 SKT, which was very famous for falling behind early and then coming back late. That is really rare that a team can do that on a consistent basis or even become known for that within the context of League of Legends. And certainly Riot's been trying to fix that. I mean, the thing about gold bounties, the thing about objective bounties is that they are trying to fix this because again, I bring this up on the show a lot. They have never talked about this because it would deflate the hype out of their own game. And once you realize
they can't admit there's a blue shell, Monty, if it's Formula One. You know what I mean? You can't have Mario Kart but pretend it's Formula One. And spoiler, sometimes this is Mario Kart.
Yeah. So they've been trying to fix this issue. Which has you? I mean, you can see that the issue is being fixed. Like, look at the Misfits comebacks from this year. Look at the fact that EG almost beat G2 in the group stage of this tournament, despite having a 10K gold deficit. You can see those deficits just evaporate, right? So it is getting better. I'm not sure if I like the way in which it is getting better, but this is all to say that still early game gold is king. And the fact of the matter is that T1, throughout their 16 games that they've played at this MSI so far, have a 94% first tower rate, which is all but one game, okay? And then they have a 100% first three tower rates and an 81% herald rate. Now, it is really hard to come back with a team that can do that with many different, like all kinds of different compositions, even when they're throwing in the late game, even when they're playing suboptimal comps. Their early game is so spectacular that it makes it really hard for a team to consistently win. And the fact that they can do that they can get all three turrets first in every single game they played in a best of one is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the side for RNG, like if you're looking for an RNG win, I'd say that their mid game has been completely spectacular, and they played against top esports, you know, and top esports often came out the early game with a lead, and then they managed to claw it back. And I do feel like T1 opts into skill checks a lot. I feel like this is such an interesting dynamic because one of the big things with T1 is, you know, you think of your typical expectation for an LPL team is like super aggressive, love skill checks. That's more T1. And on the other side, you think like the more traditional LCK view is like the macro slow.
I was actually going to bring this up, so I think it's great. Yeah, continue.
Yeah. So it's like if T1 end up having a bad series, if they end up skill checking, and you know, like Gumayushi's been a bit rough this tournament. If they end up not hitting correctly, I could definitely see a world where RNG wins. But I think if T1 are playing at the level we saw from them domestically, they should, like, you know, you get that early gold lead, and as long as, and the thing is, you know, we've seen them bring out these compositions, which everyone has been critical of these drafts, where like, you know, they're heavily indexed into like accruing those early leads. If you're drafting a composition where you're going to be able to hold up in the later stages, like we've seen the meta be the team fights, and then you're still able to find gold leads, maybe not as extreme, maybe you don't get like a 5k gold lead, you come out with a 3k gold lead, but your comp holds are better, it should be a no-brainer, as long as when it comes to those like moments around Baron or around Dragon, you're setting up correctly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you about that analysis too. Whereas like what's been frustrating for me about T1 is that they haven't been skill checking enough. Like I literally look at some of these games and I'm like, you guys are trying to play this like very well. First off, we'll get into it. You're itemizing to play like split push with like this like Riftmaker Kennen build, or like, you know, split push into one, and then you're like opting into team fights when they have exhaust, and I'm just like, you guys are not going to fucking win this, but you also will not send the Kennen into the side lane to 1v1. So it's like you're forcing team fights, even though your comp and items are not built for these team fights, right? This is the terrible GP build that we saw with the Hullbreaker. It's not terrible. Well, I mean, it's still bad. Okay. Let's not pretend it's not bad. It's still bad, but if you commit to that build, you also have to commit to the play style that comes along with it. And I think that was one of the biggest issues that they had. And it's like, frankly, they're just not disciplined enough, as we've seen, to do the slow, methodical, perfect split pushing play. And that's not what they were about during the regular season. We talked about their comps. They were long range pick and skirmish compositions. And like, this is
Do you think that just doesn't work on the ping or something? Why do you think they've gone away from it?
no, they are doing it again now. I mean, you watch that last game versus
Why do you think they
RNG.
went away before, though? Do you think they were just fucking with people, think they'd win anyway? What do you think? What's your theory?
I think that they thought they were far enough ahead that they could take some of these fights.
Okay.
I think that they wanted to play they're used to kind of playing these team fights, but they have done it a different way in the past. The way that they control objectives previously was based around poke, but we've seen a lot less poke at this tournament. Like, they can't play the Jinx anymore, which was a huge part of Gumayushi getting resets, right? And so they've been trying to play. I don't think the meta has been good for Gumayushi, number one, but they've also been opting into a lot of Twisted Fate and Callista and just kind of falling on their face when it comes to mid and late game playing, which they didn't play these champions before, right? And this was my critique coming into this event, which is this is a great team, but they basically have one style of playing, and they have enough pieces that they can survive ban phase, but they're essentially playing the same game over and over and over again, and they are really good at it. But that's not evidence that they can play every single composition under the sun under a meta shift. Yes. And I think we've seen that. I mean, I've said that for months now, right? People are saying,
which is a big
T1's
deal,
so
though.
good they can play anything.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know that. Like, we have
this
no
is the thing
clue.
That's interesting, Monty. I feel like people have mistaken like player strength for style diversity, because technically they could play through all three lanes if they wanted to on T1. They could, obviously they have an amazing jungle and support. They have all the pieces that in theory could do this. But I agree, they've mastered a style. It's clearly their lane. I'd even go ahead and add, when you have inexperienced players like some of theirs, it's better to have sort of a game plan and stick to it and know what you're supposed to do. The problem is, essentially, people made it sound like they were like G2 2019. They could just adapt to everything that's happening and do whatever. Like, mate, almost no one could do that. Like, that's like an alien team that could really enter that dimension, as it were.
Yeah, and I
think as well.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go.
I was going to say, I think as well, when you come to these international tournaments, especially when we had like such a massive set of patches beforehand,
yes,
teams are like super quick to like jump on anything that they think, oh, like this champion could be super broken, let's like try this out, or like, oh, we think we've solved the meta with this, or oh, G2's doing well, so we should do this. And I feel like teams very quickly, they had this style, which is the reason they got to the tournament, and they tend to like drift away because they're like concerned, what if we have the wrong read on the meta and this is better, and then they keep like chopping and changing. And when it gets to the knockouts, typically that's when things are more like solidified and resolved. But you definitely see like teams try things and you're like, why would you do that when that's not the thing that really won you your domestic league?
Monty, I know this. I'm just gonna have to take a break a second. I want to just say something to you very quickly, which is I don't want our fans to ever feel like from that original show in 2014 when I was in my bedroom with no heat, like the big thing on like Game of Thrones, Jon Stark, I knew nothing about League of Legends. I was giving all the right. I don't want people to feel like the money, the fame changed us fundamentally and that we're out of touch with our own fans. But I actually did just eat way too much very expensive high grade Wagyu about an hour and a half ago, and I'm feeling a bit dozy right now. So what I want to do is you just talk to Ox for a second. I'm going to go and get a drink of whatever, or if it was my channel that I drink that perks me up. It's not cocaine, don't worry about that. That's for after pies. And I'll be back in 5 minutes, okay? So again, I've lost touch. Like, that's just totally reasonable, and don't worry about it. But anyway, thanks for all those stupid comments and Reddit threads, because you basically paid for the Wagyu. So jokes on you, right? I'm back to 1 minute. You just keep talking to him.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is what I was saying about T1. So as Thorin takes his Wagyu beef, post Wagyu beef energy break, I guess.
Yeah.
Why can't we get sponsored by Wagyu beef? Anyway, this is I think as we talk about T1, like, there were a lot of questions about how they're running, and actually, if you look at the last few games that they played at this MSI, they have a return to the Ahri, Lee Sin, Xayah. These are more or less kind of like pick playmaking champions that they can do very well with. Keria back on the Nautilus. And I think that having the long range engage and the ability to play a more skirmishy style of team fight or reposition very quickly is more of a hallmark of what we saw from T1 in their regular season and playoffs, rather than trying like heavy engage compositions with a Callista, or kind of drifting into a meta that they really are not so comfortable playing. And I think there are plenty of options for how they play out compositions for themselves within this meta. It just felt like they were creating priorities that were not necessarily up to their strengths. Like, I don't know if Zoe is the best champion for Faker right now, considering he needs to be very active about flanking in team fights and creating these picks, right? Like,
Yeah,
he needs to
and
go in, basically.
yeah, and I think as well that might be a bit of the whole day one G2 thing. That kind of again, it's like the teams quickly adapt to what they see and are like, oh, we got beaten by this. Maybe this is like the new meta. Because like even that first game we saw against G2, they were so far ahead, and it was literally like I think Carrier got picked, and then everyone was just like, oh yeah, let's just go. Let's just Carrier's dead. Let's just opt into this fight. Why not? And like they're all jumping in, and I'm like, well, yeah. I mean that goes as much as you might expect. And I feel like the RNG game we had today, it kind of just showed that T1, when you give them, this agency, this ability for people to find these windows,
Yep.
express that skills we talked about, that they really delivered. And as much as that game didn't matter, and as much as I guarantee, like the drafts, I mean, the drafts were kind of tame. I don't think there's anything
Of
that they're
course,
not going to
yes.
give anything away. It still
Yeah.
kind of showed that, like, when T1 are taking a game seriously, playing more respectful, we can see what they can do for sure.
Yeah, I just
Sure.
like the skill checking aspect of it because it just feels like player for player, pound for pound, they're the strongest overall team at this tournament. So why not just like opt into these 1v1s or 2v2s or opt into 3v3 skirmishes on the map because it's been more successful than their kind of poor ability to control objectives. I do think that to a certain there's two sides to this. I do think to a certain degree the problems at Baron have been overrated because they still have the highest first Baron rate at 75% in this tournament, right?
It's like I said, no one ever thinks you're going to steal a Baron off T1. That's so when it happens, everyone loses their mind collectively, don't they? People make it sound like they never won a bloody Baron, Monty. They won most.
Think about this for a second. So T1 is criticized very heavily for giving up or like having bad Baron fights. Now, frequently they get the first Baron and then they all die. Okay, we'll put that one out there. Like it's not always good, or they'll 50-50 it and end up with a flip, right? Where they have been fortunately on the winning side of the flip. But consider the fact that RNG has played. We have stats for them for 19 games. They've won 17 of them. And even then, they only get Baron 63% of the time, despite having 17 out of 19 wins. So while I think T1's has been sloppy in terms of macro, and I wouldn't advise doing what they're doing, it has just statistically worked out more often than not for them. However, they've also, as we saw in the EG game, literally lost games because of this. So I think it becomes more egregious when you're actually just throwing games that should be won, or we see in the G2 game as well, where they're just throwing when they should be playing for other objectives. There have been games where, I mean, people also talked about the EG game where they gave up the Hextech Soul like really stupidly. But if you actually watch the G2 game, they gave up a Dragon Soul in that game as well. They were on Soul Point for a very long time, not prioritizing that objective and trying to go for the Baron instead. So this is all to say that their late game and mid game macro decision making hasn't been excellent. And if you are that team, and RNG is a team that excels in team fighting, that is a little bit more methodical around objectives, that does have the kind of superstar power of a carry like Gala, then I would be taking more of these scraps if I was T1. Like, I would just be skill checking constantly. They're a young team.
On that angle, I wanted to get your take on this, Ox, as someone who actually watches the LPL, because the problem is this, right? Like, I don't claim to watch loads. I mainly just watch the marquee matchups of the playoffs of the LPL. But one thing I always thought was, like, because of last MSI, the one that RNG won, just the way the meta worked and the way that they were playing against those opposition, obviously Gala was the carry because that's just the way the team played out, right? And he was on his fucking Kaiser like 24/7, right? So I always thought, unfortunately, it meant people who only saw MSI thought this was like the new Uzi Eye or something like. And then meanwhile, you go back to the LPL and I was like, bro, he's not even the best fucking AD carry by that's a country mile. There's loads of people that you'd consider better. So you come back and he's having another MSI where he's popping off again. But I do notice, dude, the meta is almost his entire best champions of all time. It's like it's almost like they're trying to fuck with me and do it again, where they're making him just look like it's going to be the bin at fucking season 10 Worlds all over again. Like you couldn't make this guy look better. He has been served up an amazing meta to play in, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I think like he was still a pivotal carry for them in the LPL because the way the meta was in general, a lot of people playing for bot, but like the meta for Gala has been so much better for them for Gumayushi. I think if we didn't have this big 80 carry meta shift, would have been way more favored for T1. But even like I mean, in the LPL, I think like there's such a varying level of a lot of 80 carries, but Viper was the best 80 carry without doubt.
Yes.
Like he is. I don't think anyone in the LPL compares to him. I even think like I would put him above Gumishi, but it's hard to call that, right? Until we see them go up against each other.
Sure.
The thing is, like, he didn't get here. He didn't get that far in playoffs. And ultimately, RNG, they went through such a weird like passage over the split where they're like, oh, how do we play with Bin? Because if we don't play for him, he kind of runs it. And they're like, oh, well, we'll just play for. Well, then they were sort of playing for Gala more, but then Bin would have issues. And then Xiaohu just became that like super roamer, like Cryan was, to kind of try and help facilitate the map. But no, I don't think Gala ever was really in the conversation for best AD carry in the LPL. And then this tournament, he just like popped off, and obviously the meta hit right, and then as a result, as you said, kind of a repeat of last time MSI. I was like, holy, this guy's
Yes.
insane.
Yes, I know you all watched Doublelift's videos, and he was like, "Oh my God, Carlos so said." You have to understand, Doublelift probably thought he was a magician just because he got out of groups. Whatever, easy shot to fire, but whatever. He's firing shots all the time now, mate. Don't worry about it.
I think too. What's interesting about Gala though, and what I do have questions about, is what happens when RNG ends up on the red side, because they do need Gala to pop off to win. Because like Bin hasn't had a great tournament. Wei's been better than expected, but still kind of bad. Xiaohu has been good, but it really has been Gala carrying a lot of their games. Like, he's still the king of damage percentage on this team. He's the king of damage percentage among ADCs at this tournament. But when we look at the last draft, and again, we can have an argument about how serious RNG was drafting in the last game that they played, considering they were locked in for first place and had no reason to win this game. But at the same time, when they have to ban Lucian on the red side, and then the other team bans Kai'Sa and Ezreal on the blue side, where does Gala go at that point in time? Because those champions, Kai'Sa and Ezreal, have been his best champions at this event. And I almost feel like he needs these champions in order to be the big carry force within this roster. And so that leads me to a lot of questions, especially if the Xayah is picked away from him, like it was in this scenario. He ends up on the Aphelios. Is this a problem? Because if they're using early picks on AD carries, that means that Bin's champion pool is getting dangerously narrow. We've seen RNG like prioritize the Gwen pretty heavily. All teams have prioritized the Gwen pretty heavily overall, but it seems like Bin is more in need of early power picks within this meta, and if they have to use those for Gala instead, I think their drafting options become much more limited.
Yeah, I think you just have to sack one of the solo laners, which isn't ideal. But like in that draft specifically, I would have sacked TF or GP and then picked up an AD carry before the second ban rotation where they banned out the Kai'Sa Ezreal.
I think
that has to be the play. Yeah, because I mean,
they also did get dumpstered in that lane because like the Aphelios Alistar has no agency early. Like, you're just gonna get absolutely slapped around in the laning phase, and they never. I think the idea is, okay, well, they'll push up to us if we have TF, then we can make a play with Alistar and as they pushed up in the lane, but that just doesn't happen within this game, right?
Yeah,
and a lot of it is because of what was going on the top side, where Bin and Wei were getting kind of dominated by Zeus and Owner, and it created so many issues.
And that was kind of the frustrating thing, because even like they got like a decent amount of kills on Azeus, and they got to get like some momentum for Bin, and then Bin just kind of like, despite the fact you've been played for, really fell apart. And again, like this best of one was meaningless, so mainly it's not indicative. But that's kind of the issue that they've been working with the whole split, where because at the start of the split there was like more the control mates, like it's a Corki Victor meta. And Xiaohu was like more of a prominent carry then. It was like Xiaohu Gala were like the big carries of the team, but Bin was still a bit of a liability. And then over the split, it's like this has been the big thing for this team, is how do we make Bin fit? Because I think that's why Wei struggled a lot, because back when it was Xiaohu top lane, it was very straightforward what he had to do, right? He was heavily playing towards Xiaohu in the top lane, and so it was very clear what he had to do in the early game. And it was hard to match because of the level of the players. But the problem is now he's got more of a bit of a free roam in terms of what he can do, but he was very sort of very not what the word is, like very telegraphed, very straightforward sort of ganks and plays in the early game, which would often like backfire. He wasn't very inventive, which is why I thought G2 would be a good stylistic matchup for them, because Jankos is very good at finding these like unique ways of approaching early ganks to find advantages. But I feel like that's the thing. It's like they won the LPL without really solving this bin problem. And what's hilarious is like so many people, I saw so many comments when people were talking about top laners at this tournament, like, oh, who's the best top laner? And everyone was like, dude,
Yep.
Bin, 20, like, remember when we saw him at World Finals? He got a pentakill, and then, dude, I watched finals, and he was sick. And I'm like, yeah, that was the one series,
Yep.
the whole year so far, where this guy popped off. Like, one series, he decides to show up. And, you know, I'm gonna be honest, if he does this again this tournament, that can actually work, right? If he only shows up in the finals against T1, that's all you need to do
Sure.
to honestly potentially win the tournament. But it doesn't give me much faith.
Yeah, if you can win LPL and win an international event, that's your job done, right?
Just 2 series.
Just
That's all you
peak
need.
all you do is peak at the right time. Peak at the right time.
You understood the assignment. You did the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Listen, C's a passing grade, Monty. I have a question then. So obviously the other member of that, though, as Monty alluded to, another problem coming into this tournament that I saw and why I was worried about RNG and I expect T1 to win, unfortunately, was the weight angle. It's like, look, the problem is you've got Yankos and Order there, mate. Like, we haven't sent weaker junglers from the others. In fact, we've sent some of the strongest.
Inspired's also the best player on his team, so
and he's even doing that. He's even actually, if anything, leveled up even more from the bloody playoffs in LCS. So yeah, all those other junglers are actually potentially, I don't know about better, to be more debatable with the Inspired one. But what do you think of the way Way's played? Because actually, I feel like overall maybe he has held up better than expected.
the way is for weight. That's what it.
Yeah, I think Way's been okay. I think he struggled in LPL playoffs as well because I think like Carcer and Kanavi had like fantastic performances. Tian as well. Tian was on fire. Like a lot of people have given him flack for like the FPX performance, but like he was such a good performer. And I think ultimately the meta as well. I mean, I feel like the meta shift for RNG has been like absolutely fantastic because we sort of had a lot of more ganking junglers. Like we had things like the Volley Bear. We saw Jarvan in EU.
Yep.
You know, Lee Sin was like this heavily prioritized pick. And then
To be fair, Wei was good on Lee Sin in the LPL.
Yeah, that is fair. But I think like the reason Volley Bear is such a struggle for him is because it's like the polar opposite. It's like his weakness, right? I talked about before. This is a player who's not good at finding creative gank angles. And so if you're playing Volley Bear and you don't get like early gank stuff, you don't get these things going, you're just gonna fall off a cliff. Whereas I feel like these skirmishing junglers, like the fact that Viego is still like a prominent pick in the meta, that was like his best pick. It was getting banned or denied from him in playoffs because on this pick, you know, you just lean into the skirmishes and he's fantastic in those. And then if you need like extra pressure, Shahu will just pick Galio and roam around the map and then he kind of does your job for you. He does like the ganking. You just make sure that when it comes to the fight, you can get resets and handle that. So I think the meta shift again has helped Way out quite a bit. But ultimately, I still feel like there's games where he struggles, and that's why, you know, I think the arrangement of how we've gone into knockouts is really bad for the West because I think G2 actually I think they match up well into RNG. And I think EG, who cares about EG? They're going to lose anyway. But I think EG will really, really struggle into RNG because they don't have that stylistic advantage, and RNG are just far better than them. So I don't even see them getting a single game, honestly.
Correct.
That's sadly the way that it went in the playoffs, because obviously you get to pick. It turned out RNG. That was the significance of RNG top of the group. Because here's the thing: I wanted it to be RNG G2, and then winner of that takes T1. That's how you get sort of the rising through the dojo. Let's actually get the matchups. We know who's good. The problem now is, as you say, it'd probably be an RNG. I expect like a fairly mundane win over EG that won't be that big. Maybe the G2 series T1 could be good, but the problem is probably won't beat T1, so we'll never actually get to see what would have been. I think G2 RNG would be a banger series, right?
Yeah, I honestly think so too. I feel like, you know, especially when I know everyone got overhyped over the day 1, day 2 stuff, but if that was such a weird thing. I mean, I guess we can talk about that afterwards. But like, I feel like if we had G2 in good form going up against RNG, that'd be such an exciting series. And then, you know, the winner goes up against T1, and irrespective, like we get the most value for it. But I just feel like the arrangement we have now, I could see G2 maybe like taking a game. I could see it being like a 3-1 series, but I just think, EG.
You know what's a shame is that if we had double elimination where we might be able to see this, all they would have to do would be to add 2 broadcast days for the 2 best of 5s that would occur to be a lower bracket best of 5 between 2 teams. One of them would be eliminated, then be another lower bracket game between 2 teams. One of them. So, you know, if we were able to have nice things in League of Legends, we might have been able to see that. Depending if like if for example T1 and RNG played, T1 was waiting in the finals, then it might be G2 in the losers bracket. And by the way, you could do those all in 1 week. I mean, we just been sitting around here. We're going to be sitting around for the next couple of days with no games. Could have just.
If you're wondering, Ox, about
just
what it's
been,
been like trying to cover this tournament with Monty, there was genuinely a whole 10-minute segment where I just updated him about, because he didn't know the story of like Jankos and that plummy stream ago, and it was just me, an old boomer who doesn't even follow drama myself, trying to through the fucked up prism of what I could remember, explain that, and in doing so, it was sort of like, why is that more interesting than MSI? You know, that actually was a real segment on an episode.
It was more interesting.
In case you don't know, it's sort of like they are actually getting on better, and they have actually gone and done a lot of activities, and there've been a lot of cute moments and like more like rom-com aspects. But here's the problem: every time they sort of because here's the thing, they sort of the awkwardness is you don't address the idea of like, are we actually dating here? Is this just a streamer thing? Is it for clout? Is it a joke for the MSI? Are we sort of friends? And maybe it's because they're not really just that. The few times they do, first of all, Yanks is a bit awkward. He's a nerd, obviously, but he's doing a pretty good fucking job. I tell you what, first of all, he's in the gym. He's looking sharp. Also, he's Polish. He's still maintaining his hairline. I don't know if that's real, mate, but if so, congratulations, you won the genetic lottery. And then finally, this is the last detail I would say. I've noticed every time it comes up, though, she always just says, and she's saying it in sort of like, this is where things get lost in translation. She keeps sort of saying, no, we are friends. And then that's obviously like he's friend zoned instantly, right? But I think she's more taking that, like, we're friends now. And like, let's just see, let's not put pressure on it.
How
Right?
it goes, yeah.
So what I'll say is, there was a tweet I did. I actually even got involved. That's how you know the drama's ridiculous. It's like I'd watched enough with the popcorn. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get involved. Threw that out the way. And I saw Aziel or whatever. It was just like, what's going on? Like, is Jankos just like, is he got a chance? Have they broken up or something? And she replied, I didn't know she was on Twitter. She actually replied to Aziel and she just said, like, best friend zoned. And I thought, bloody hell. Again, do you actually know what that means? That's wild. Like, dude, now you're not even just friend zoned. You have to be a best friend. Fucking hell. So I actually thought, you know what, Monty? I'll take my one act of like human like kindness and compassion and grace and deliver it to Jankos of all people. And I just said, well, your friend seems really funny, handsome, and good at League. I think he'll be taken really soon. Let's see if she got the sort of message I was sending there. Just saying.
Wingmanning on Twitter.
There you go. It's all right. Listen, he's ganked for 1 million people. They may as well have, someone's got to fucking have him 2v1 every now and then. All I'm saying is, I'll leave the kill for you.
That's great.
That's what he needs.
I'm glad we had some level of enjoyment so far in this MSI.
There you
go. But yeah, I think this week could have been used. Get some more mileage out of the venue, out of Mexico in Busan. There, right? You rented it for the whole week. Why not just put on a couple more days? Give us a nice little lower bracket there. Be very easy to do. These days are dark. You're not doing anything anyway. Let's go. Give us 2 more best of 5s.
That's what I mean. For the days are dark and full of best of 5 lower bracket matches. What the hell? Game of Thrones or something.
Sorry, guys. Dark days are production terms for days that the lights aren't on.
There you go.
Right, there you go. I fell into the using production lingo trap amongst for the pleb fans, which is actually a giant pet peeve of mine. So I don't know why they did that. I hate it when people do that on like official broadcasts, start using production lingo. It's like nobody understands. Don't do that. Don't do
love it when they just go like, sorry, I messed up that throw and stuff. Like, they don't even know what that means. What are you talking about now? You must start quoting things about the lights and shit, you idiot. And also, you're breaking the fourth wall. They're not supposed to know that. They're actually supposed to be so stupid, these fans. They think you're just speaking impromptu, all the things, and you haven't had a meeting before where you send your points to the horse and they set you up. It's amazing how Shocks just reads your mind and knows you're fucking hell, guys. Clue up, will you? Clue up.
People were amazed by the Wizard of Oz because he wasn't drawing attention to the fact that, that he was just a man behind the curtain. He wasn't like,
he wasn't the opposite,
look behind the curtain now, please.
Lever, look how the mouth opens. All I'm saying is it might be me doing it. And when I say me, I mean that man behind you. He wasn't like that, was he? I mean, give me a break. He was the opposite. He was a liar. He was like Elon Musk.
Too funny. All right.
I've got a real question, right? I think, bearing in mind we're at the playoffs, this is what we do. Let's have a real discussion about EG, and then let's put those shitters to bed and move on to what's going to happen the rest of the time. Let's have the real discussion.
I want to jump off what Ox was saying, which is like the problem with EG is that EG gets dumped on in laning phase and has a very poor early game, or has a very passive early game while Inspired like farms the jungle, right? And then they come in and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to make some smart Baron fights and we're going to team fight kind of well in the mid and late game. The problem with doing that style is that RNG is literally just the better version of you.
Yep.
And also, they're much more capable of smashing the early game, as we saw in the last game that these two teams played against each other, where EG got absolutely pooped on. So I don't really know what the win condition for EG is in this matchup, because they are just worse at everything about League of Legends than RNG. But there is no hope here.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, at least if they were against T1, I could see T1 starting like an Baron, EG like get one game, like maybe it's like game 3 of the series.
We saw it happen.
Yeah, like T1 are like, whatever, we won the series. It's kind of like, season 5 Worlds, like how SKT had won like every single game, and then the finals they did like that in that dive level 1 under the tier 2, and then they lost. They were like, oh, okay, guys, let's get serious. I could see that happening if they're against T1, and obviously like it'd be great for EG. It's like, oh, we took a game of T1, especially if they eventually win. But I feel like RNG just won't mess around with that, and it'll like that game we just saw, which was brutal. Like, I think it's a fact that that game was just so incredibly one-sided throughout, and it just showed the stark difference between like the top 3 and the 4th. Just how hopeless it kind of felt, and even the fact that like RNG were opting in these moments, like the Gala in the bot lane when he solo killed Danny, like they were just hyping, they were just going for these hype crazy plays, like they just weren't bothered, like they were just styling on them, honestly.
I think people think, unfortunately, you're hating on EG when you say this, because the thing is, if you notice, right, they think what we're doing is you build them up and you break them down, right? No, what we're doing is we're giving you your credit. Like, as Monty said, there was actually plenty of elements. And by the way, to even be a late game team fighting team from NA in an international tournament, like fucking props, A+, when the fuck's that ever happened in history?
Show me another time that T1 was doing, like, show me another time an NA team, like, out macroed T1 in a late game.
Never happened. So the thing is, basically, that tells me coaching staff's doing a great job. Players are playing within the game plan. By the way, inexperienced NA players even know how to actually play from behind. All great stuff. The problem is when we're assessing now only playing the best teams, who, yes, as Monty said, they won one single best of one out of 10 games. I mean, even more if you go to the G2 thing where they lost all 4 before. So the problem is this, right? Only against the elite teams of the tournament. The big problem is this. If you even look at the roster of EG, there's no traditional place that you could have like an epic overperformance MVP level thing that would win the tournament. I'll give you an example. Impact's the top laner. His entire strength has never been to be the hard carry. Inspired, yes, is going to farm up, but he's not going to be the crazy variance jungler. He's going to farm up, play within what the game gives him. Obviously, Jojo in lane's going to be erratic, but actually, if anything, they don't put him in a position where it's like, right, you're just the fucking side lane. Carry the whole game, bro. And then the bot lane, like that whole message is like, just survive. Now we can join the fight. So the problem is, if you're G2, you've got your caps. You've maybe got what Jankos can do. You've got the Targamas could have some epic team fight. Like, I don't, unfortunately, there isn't sort of the pop-up factor to me to the same degree. I know people will say, Daddy was popping up. He's the AD carry in a team fight. I don't know if you're aware. Like, that's just getting kills as an AD carry. Like, pop off. There, he did some nice moves. He did a nice flash over, a little jump and that. That's all cool. You did your little hop, skip and a jump. But the problem is, like, there isn't the player that can break the matrix on EG for me.
The problem with EG, I think the core problem is just Jojo Pyun's experience level. I mean, look at who he's playing against in these playoffs. It's fucking Faker, Xiaohu, and Caps. These are 3 of the best mid laners of all time in League of Legends.
Oh, it is. Sure.
And so much of the mid lane right now is translating pressure into other lanes and knowing when to change your lane assignment in order to put pressure on the map or put pressure on First Herald. And like, these are extremely advanced concepts that people like Xiaohu and Faker have been doing for the last couple of years in terms of their playstyle and their career. I mean, that has
They don't even try and carry from mid normally now. They just think, fuck it, it's not the way I play.
Both of them are very low economy mid laners. And so is Jojo Pyun. But the thing is that Jojo Pyun doesn't do as much on the map and doesn't do as much in terms of macro. And like, that's totally understandable given their relative level, like, you know, given Jojo Pyun's level of expertise. And it would be unreasonable to expect him to be projecting as much kind of power onto the map as we see from Faker and Xiaohu. But at the same time, you can't win early games if you're falling behind in the mid lane in that way. If your mid laner isn't making cross map roams, like isn't playing on the opposite side of the map when you see the jungler in the same way that Xiaohu and Faker do, isn't making plays, and like Jojo Pyun plays an aggressive lane style and hopes he can pin the enemy mid laner in there. unfortunately, many of these mid laners simply don't care about losing minion waves, and they'll
saying,
just go
yeah.
somewhere else. So you know,
Exactly.
it's like they just
Like,
opt,
haha,
they just opt out of his game. Like they just leave.
I'm off. Yeah, you have fun with that. I'm off.
Yeah. So I think it's really hard because he just doesn't have the same level of macro game knowledge, which tracks with his entire background. He's still a relatively new player to League of Legends. He is phenomenal in terms of how fast he has grown as a player, but to put him in the same boat as some of these veterans who have been playing for almost 10 years, I think is just unreasonable. But it also is a major factor into why EG is falling behind in these early game situations. And he's also just not a spectacular team fighter either. And his job in team fights is mostly just to exist in the middle and run interference. And also his champion pool was hurt. Coming into this MSI, like you can't just play Ryze and stand in the middle and fling spells around and rune prison people while Danny does 1 million damage with Jinx rockets from half the map away, right? So they got hit really hard in terms of their play style, and then Jojo champion pool got hit really hard, and they can't play the way they want to. And Jojo doesn't have a lot of tools in his toolbox. He's got a couple good tools, don't get me wrong.
Are you implying maybe Tryndamere isn't the carry pick for Jojo Pion?
Look, all right, we can talk about
RNG.
that game. Okay, so I think that draft was very interesting. Because there were some advantages that G2 got, or EG got from that draft, which I really liked. Like, they faked the Galio first pick as a mid pick, and then it ended up being a support pick. Once they saw what was going on with the Jax, it did end up like forcing Caps to play top lane as Gwen, and then trying to play the Jax in mid lane. So they did do what EG themselves have done with Impact and Jojo, which is swap the lanes to get preferable matchups. The problem is that you end up with Galio Ezreal in the bot lane, and then just get your face stomped in bot lane, and your tricks don't really work past a certain point, especially like once Jax gets the frozen heart. There's no hope for Trinity in the side lane.
Yeah, I feel like that was such a weird one as well, because they got like Kennen and Gwen, but I feel like it's not. I mean, I feel like they rearranged things to try and be like, okay,
Well, they wanted
like,
Tryndamere into Gwen, right?
But like even then, like Kennen and Gwen is still a good matchup. So they made sure Gwen had a bad matchup, but it's like it's not enough. Like you can't just be like, we have one good matchup where like Gwen is gonna be bad. It's a Gwen. Like as long as she gets like a modicum of farm, she's gonna do Gwen things right in the later stages. But then on top of that, you also have like the bot lane who outperform you in lane and outscale you. You have like the Jax who's going to become a monster in the later stages. And honestly, they could just play through side. If G2 wanted to, they could have just played through sides. You have Nocturne and Kai'Sa who are so good at like taking out anyone who tries to contest the sides. You have two fantastic champions who can lean into that side. So even if Gwen gets set behind, Jax is there. But they don't even need to. They just went in the team fights and they just absolutely destroyed them. And I don't know. Like, I feel like the fact that EG struggled so heavily against G2, because I was hoping they'd get at least like one game against them. I feel like that'd be, I was saying I thought there'd be at least one, but the fact that they've lost all of them is pretty rough. And I think you were kind of saying before about the veterancy on the roster as well. Like obviously, like Impact's a super veteran, but I think like the thing with RNG is like Xiaohu and Ming are just like unwavering. And it's the fact like because Lyric was telling me there was some comms that came, like when they do like the voice comms of the teams. That game where Bin like teleport, like he died, teleport back in his Camille and died again. So voice comms from there. Xiaohu literally says, "Bin, you're worthless. Teleport in, distract them, and then we can contest vision around the river." Like he literally just said die, and Bin's like, "Yes, my captain." Like that's how it is. And I'm not gonna,
I see.
Like there's definitely moments where Bin ints on his own. You have to tell him, right? But
what's
like,
fucked up is I've heard that actually
he's just a shock troop.
They were telling Summit like, you're going to pick Renekton, and you're going to be like the laser pointer to get all the cats, and they were saying, no, anyway, that's a joke. He was just shit. Like, well, the thing is though, mate, in this game as well, this is what I'd love to ask the EG coaches stuff. So you were going to get so far ahead in the game that you'd never need to late game team fight. And so you'd never have to worry about the fact that they have like Jax, Gwen, and a fucking Pyke. And when those things come online, it's going to be cancer for your team.
This was the great...
Give me a break. Like, what was the plan here?
This was the great undoing, because like, by doing this on blue side, and by G2 saving the support pick for last, they got to see the Galio. And then you look at it, you're like, wait, they're going to play like tier Ezreal and Galio? Okay, we'll just pick Pyke and Kai'Sa and just we'll just fucking all in them. Like, what is Galio supposed to do in that situation? Like, what he walks up, okay, he gets hooked, or you walk back and then hook him back in, and then you all in him with the Kaisa, and like Ezreal's not going to do any damage. Like, it's a fucking terrible lane. It's awful.
Garbage, yeah.
It's terrible. So like they were trying. It was clear that their strategy was to sack the bot lane in an attempt to rescue the other lanes through like playing this shell game with the picks. But unfortunately, I think now they did do well in the top side, right? Like Caps definitely looked uncomfortable in the top lane, but they didn't get Broken Blade enough behind that, you know, G2 can play a pretty comfortable scaling game. And the fact that Nocturne can just show up in the side lanes later and instantly force these 2v1s is going to get your solo lanes back in it at some point.
This just loops back into what you were saying, though. Like, they've just sort of run out of picks. Like, they don't have an unlimited amount. That's why they have to go to things that aren't that meta, but was their style that you like. By the way, I will just say again to tag, because if you think about this, this is mad. Cause NA won one game against T1. As I said, so did G2. What are you talking about? But cause NA won one game against that, we almost had them trying to do the NA over EU. Look, in a tournament where EU won 6 games in a row out of 6 again. Like, are they just supposed to do perfect game you every time before they get the credit? What are we doing here? Tip the fucking hat and get on with it.
It also shows, like, especially I think in this last game, like it shows almost that like EG is not confident that they're going to win a straight up game, because they have to resort to you know, some level of trickery within the pick band to
like
have confidence.
Like, ooh, what's going on over here? Ooh, could be anything. Ooh, yes.
Like, Meanwhile, G2's just not buying. They're like, okay, just wait for support. Just wait. There it is, Pike.
They basically, Monty, they're basically, for a mad old school reference, they're basically the guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark who comes up with Indiana Jones, and then he has that, like, fucking, he's doing all that stuff with the sword, and then just pulls out the gun and shoots him. That was G2. They just pulled out the gun and just shot him straight away. Like, that's it. Like, it was all great, but you're dead now. So.
As a hilarious aside about Raiders of the Lost Ark, did you know that Harrison Ford improvised that scene? That there was supposed to be, like, an epic fight choreographed, and they were just, like, rehearsing it, and he just pulled out his gun and shot him, and they're like, that's hilarious.
Sounds like it, because if people don't know, essentially he is like Han Solo. Apparently he is just like a maudlin fuck, like, whatever. I guess
apparently
I
heard he was ill. He had like food poisoning or something, and that was the reason they had this whole thing choreographed. This guy was trained, and they just scrapped it because he was ill.
Yeah, like, Steven, what do you know? I got a fucking I'm ill. Fuck off, shoot him. Gun beats a whip.
To be fair, it's much more. It was better that way anyway. See, that's the adversity can cause ingenuity at times.
I also always wondered. Obviously, now I learned it was totally irrelevant to that. I always wondered if that was some sort of whack attempt to pair him with fucking Han Solo, because Han Solo shit obviously was like, you've got all the magic of that. It's like, you just need a blaster, don't you? I thought that was like some sort of like fucked up, like old school fan service tie-in, but apparently it was just Harrison Ford was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do half an hour's work today. Who am I? LS. Oh, sorry, I've revealed that thing about Cloud9 again. Oh, shit, I keep doing that on air. Why did I do that? My bad. All jokes, of course. All for the fun of the family. All for the fun of the family.
Ox just dodged that one entirely.
All right, don't worry about it. Yeah. Like old school jacks, just dodge, baby, dodge.
Yes, spin over my head.
Make it in a fucking in League of Legends ever. If you think invulnerability is bad, dodge was the most cancer shit of all time. Because even you don't know if it's going to work like that. I hated that, but anyway, I'm getting off on the track.
I don't miss the the double RNG mechanics of crit and dodge being in the game at the same time. That was
what?
Truly miserable.
When people complain about reworks and they don't like some of them and some of them are not as good or whatever, two that were definitely massive upgrades have got to be fucking Rise and Jax, because these were two champions that are just like, yeah, they're whatever, until the one moment that they're not, and then the whole game's ruined. Like the moment that they're not a joke, the whole game is that you can't be. The Jax can take every tower, you can't do it. The Rise, I think I told you that story where like it's holds point and click, and you're like, this is pure cancer. What is the outplay? It's like, don't let him get to that point. Like, oh, what are you talking about? That can't be the outplay. It's the real champion. It's fair play.
The key barometer is if Rise has a 45% win rate in solo queue, in like, upper solo queue, he's broken at the. He needs to have like a 35% win rate to be balanced.
I just find it hilarious that like he's been reworked so many times that he's still just like in this position. Like they nerfed like 4 times in a row to get him out of the meta.
Jason, he can't be killed, mate. He'll just he comes back every single fucking time. Exactly. For better or for worse. Although I will say though, on an actual serious point, that's one thing I actually do like about League though, is that there are the champions. They're just eternal because the kit just does stuff that everyone's sort of programmed to know how to use that tool in the game. Which is, by the way, something EG's been doing with some of the pieces they've been picking. Like they just want the kit. It's not about the fucking strength of the champion. They need to have this for impact. They need to be able to set up this for Danny. Jojo needs to be on something that's not too ridiculous. You can't fuck it up to like they actually. That's the one thing I have to keep going back to with EG. I have to give praise to the coaching staff. I think they've done a marvelous job. And especially, by the way, like I alluded to, not just winning the T1 game, like it's the idea you've sort of held your nerve during the. Remember, the old thing about NA is they win on the day 1 and 2, and then they shit their bed completely, and no
G2
one cares
did
about them
NA.
at the end. This was impressive, actually, the way they sort of like got their shit together towards the end, as it were, and made the little run.
Yeah, especially with like NA rookies on the roster as well, because I think people always go like really high with expectations for the lineup. I think for this team just to show up and like do reasonably is like enough, considering it's like such a different lineup than we've seen. But I think they've come out with some decent performances, and I'm like, it would be nice if they'd beaten G2 on the last day. But despite the fact they'll probably get bodied by RNG, I still think it's like a good showing. I think this is what like they should look for more, and hopefully, I mean, the whole intention for this team is that like other NA orgs are inspired by this and start trying to cultivate native talent and not just importing anyone and everyone.
Well, I think
also, I will say this. One thing I don't really like and vibe with too much. I know that obviously as people commenting on it and broadcast, and to some degree we are putting ourselves in like an observer position where we're like the fucking arbiter of what's good and bad. But it's when they have that tone, when it's the NA talent particularly, where they're sort of like, come on, when are you guys going to produce like top guys? Spoiler. Freak, mate, you can go out there and you can get a Korean translator to do this. Get a Korean translator to translate what those Korean casters are saying. You're the fucking NA talent of the casting world, mate. Like, you're doing all right. You're carrying your own way. Like, mate, you should see the level of info and shit they know and research they have and how they coordinate it all. They go deep as fuck, those analysts, the Korean ones. They're really fucking next level, mate. So it ain't just the talent in the game that's not like the top one. You just don't know because of the language barrier. Like I'm telling you, if people don't know, because they're totally regionalized. Remember, you only have to care about Korea if you're in the Korean scene. They get all the info from the coaches and the analysts, and they just know behind the scenes. It's like, mate, they are really deep if you know what they're saying in the game. I've seen a few like subtitled VODs that were mega. I was very impressed.
I also will say just about the NA casters in general, who seem to have such a deep passion and like care so much about NA winning for whatever reason. Like I don't even understand that take, because any of these NA casters could have gone and casted a better region at any point in their careers.
Yeah.
There have been openings in Korea. There have been openings in Europe. There have been openings in China. I mean, the fact is that they want to just whine about NA while sitting in. They are exactly the same as the NA players, by the way.
It's true.
They want to sit in Los Angeles and do the least amount of work possible, doing like 5 best of ones a week. They don't want to cast 10 best of 3s every single week, and that's it. They just want to live their California life doing the least amount of work possible. And so
imagine if they did though, Monty.
Imagine still getting mad when you're doing exactly the same thing that the players
Imagine
are.
what you could do to potentially even expose the audience of like the Western audience to like LCK or LPL. Dude, imagine if an A-lister went to one of those regions. It was even a whole thing. Like, they're coming for next year. Like, I'll make a random one. Kobe's going to the LPL and Freak's going to the LCK. Who the fuck wouldn't tune in? That would actually make it super hype in a way. So, but then again, as you say, Monty, they just want to fucking, we'll cancel the spring split.
Sorry,
I'd say cancel it.
For every year you cast the LPL, you actually get like 3 years of experience that the LCS casters.
That's true.
It's actually kind of crazy when you think
You're
about
hitting the
it.
reps.
Dude, this is actually probably still true. I haven't done the calculation, but I would guess. Remember me, who stopped casting League in 2016? I think I have still done more games than most of the LCS casters because I was doing 10 best of 3s a week for years. You know what I mean? And I stopped years ago.
Ox has the true nightmare scenario, and this is it. Like, essentially, you have the equivalent of what I have with history in esports, where, like, a game like Counter-Strike, for example, has just had too long a history. So people will tell me, dude, about what players were like in 2007 when they are 16 now and never watched the player play. So he has that as well, Monty, where what happens is because they watch Worlds, they try to tell him what the players are like and what their career's been like and whether they should cut or sign them. Meanwhile, he's watched like 70 best of 3s that fan hasn't watched. And we're not talking like the slight disparity. The mismatch in sample size is bonkers. And they're just remembering 4 games going, he is a god though. Like you said about the bin example was the classic one.
Yeah.
Obviously the old school ones, the similar ones, like obviously famously everyone thinks like Knight and Nami are shit, you know, and overhyped and that. It's like, brother, the joke is that was the one tournament ever where Knight didn't just fucking like transcend and like fucking the thing out of the end of like fucking what's it called? Just some sort of demon that just kills everyone in here. Like he was just that was the one tournament where he was just all right. So that must drive you up the wall a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the bin was a big one because I kept seeing comments about that, and I was just like, I don't know what. I mean, clearly you just haven't watched it, but as well, like the way I view it is, I feel like there's definitely people who tune in the LPL for their favorite teams. But anyone who like the only people who watch like every single game in the LPL are like the true diehard fans, or people who are getting paid to do it, or I don't know the third category, people who just love the league so much. Like,
I mean, I can't do it, man. It's too many games. Like, I have to pick and choose, right?
It's so many, and like, I mean, that's one of the issues. Like, the way it's always talked about, like by the casting team, is like the hyperbolic time chamber, because you do so much casting when you're there. There's so much to keep up with. Like, even just like, because obviously a big part of like being a caster is like watching the games live and tweet about them. Even just doing that is such a time investment every day. Like even just reviewing the games, like let's say, you know, you like have a day off because you're busy, or you know, you go out or something, like next day you now have 2 best threes from yesterday and today's best of threes to catch up. So it's just it's a lot, and I can understand why people don't like clue into it and watch all of it, but then they just kind of tune into playoffs, or like even like the late bits of playoffs, and then are just like, oh, so this is how it is. Oh, Bin was sick in finals, so that's how it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, or like, oh, top esports don't know how to close out games, which is kind of true, but also like RNG are the best mid game team probably in the world, and like, and so it's like you know, they just make these assumptions, and then yeah, it kind of it can be quite irritating.
Funny thing is, though, that term, even though it wouldn't apply in the same context, could also work for international tournaments. They are hyperbolic time chambers. You're just in this period where that is all of eternity is just this one tournament, and then it's all pure hyperbole every day about this guy's shit garbage. Will he ever know how to play? Fire him. The draft was amazing, though, but the way that they closed the like fucking like I said, the way like he was saying, the whiplash is mental, mate. Like they should be like they should bring back that insurance sponsor they have on the LCS and just be like, oh, have you got fucking whiplash? You need some physical therapy work on your neck after the fucking the 1-0 of the NA for that fucking it's metal, isn't it? Exactly. Can I claim on that Phoebe or whatever it was? What was it? Floor. There we go. Floor. There we go. That was the one.
That would actually be a fire like insurance segment of, you know, the whiplash from showing people like before and after on social media.
You know, that's one. It's all your problem. I made the joke the other week. I've got a similar one. The only thing that actually sucks about the modern day, where you can buy, like I have the NFL pass, for example, is when they show those commercials, right? Because the problem is this, Monty. I'm having my brain bombarded by marketing, but for stuff I can't even buy and I'm not even thinking of. So suddenly I know all these things about like insurance companies in America, like how they are, and then also I know all the like offers, like you get the McRib back, his baby backs with the double. I'm like, what even is that? Why would I want it? And then I'm back in the I'm back in the game. It's like, that's fucking whiplash in itself, mate. Like, it's culture shock. I'm being bombarded. I feel like I'm actually in a fucking POW camp in Vietnam. Like, fucking hell, what's going on? When do I get back home to the game?
You know, the funniest thing about that was that, so in the early days of League of Legends, famously, several of the higher up people at Riot Esports would say repeatedly, constantly, oh, we don't want to be like NASCAR. Which is the implication, for those of you guys who don't know, is like the NASCAR cars are covered in logos, like the advertising is like extremely obvious. Now,
what you going with this? Yeah.
Now, okay, what that actually meant, guys, was we are incapable of selling sponsorships, which they actually were. Which they actually were. By the way, that's not a theory, dude. That's not a theory.
We're more sort of minimalist here at Riot.
When I owned Renegades, I brought my agents from WME, which is one of the largest agencies in the world, to a team meeting, and they were both like, my agents who were there were like, what is wrong with these people? Why can't they sell anything? And it's because they weren't retained. They later retained one of the major agencies in Hollywood in order to sell for them. And they started to sell these sponsorships, and they've been doing much better. But it's just hilarious because they were like, we don't want to become NASCAR. Meanwhile, Red Bull Power Play, or Baron Power Play, Bud Light Ace, MasterCard, you know, mythic item, like basically they have become NASCAR is the hilarious part
difference or whatever. Yeah, all that jazz in it. I know.
Except at least with NASCAR, like you don't hear like the Standard Oil lap or whatever. Like they've actually infiltrated it even in a more annoying way than NASCAR by having it become part of the fucking commentary within the game. But at least they sold sponsorships. That is actually important. I support monetization of esports. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
Don't give them too many ideas though, because I'm scared. Like my nightmare is the NASCAR one, because this is my nightmare. I log on, right? I'm watching a game. Oh, it's LCS. Let me have a look what's going on there. And like Ezreal has like a Balenciaga skin that he's just wearing the gear.
No!
And this is my nightmare. Someone else, like, it's like, oh, and it's preppy fucking, like, I want to pick a random champion. It's preppy Aphelios with the Abercrombie and Fitch fit. He's got like a fucking polo, like a sweater wrapped around his neck. Like that would be my nightmare. Actually, all the logos everywhere.
They already had the Kiana skin, right? The Louis
Vuitton.
Yes.
Yeah. So it started.
Yes. That's my nightmare right there. It is, for real.
But my other triggering thing is like I actually like some of the sponsorships because I think like the gold lead that LCS does is incredibly useful, and I've really enjoyed that. And I actually I like the MasterCard Mythics too because it shows, you know, it gives you a visual cue.
Yes.
But the problem
That's
is
a good feature, that you bought the item,
both of those are good features, guys. The problem is that they only exist when sponsors pay for them, so we don't have a gold lead at like MSI, or presumably, hopefully we have one at Worlds. But if they don't have a sponsor to do that, then we just don't get the information. Or it's like, if MasterCard's not there, then we don't get the pop-up on the side of the screen, which is just, that's egregious. When you actually like withhold valuable information features from your watchers and like have them held hostage by a potential sponsorship sale, that pisses me off. Because I think that
the crowdfund this.
Well, that's illegal for Riot as well. Crowdfunding is also illegal.
Okay. I mean, there's an obvious reason, but I won't go into it because I like Ox having a career. So let's talk about League of Legends. That game, League of Legends, is brilliant. Let's get back into it. Should we actually talk about the big boys now? Because here's the thing.
No, let's talk about G2 first. That's what I mean, though. To me, it's the G2 versus T1 in the game was setting up now, right? So we've done T1, we've done RNG. What we have to ask now is this. Forget the moment, the brief moment where they actually were in trouble and everyone's like, oh my God, they might not even make the playoffs. Like, first of all, motherfucker, stop banking on Shanghai, Buffalo to beat G2. Don't be that fucking ridiculous, you idiots. But okay, they were always going to make it to me, and they made it in third anyway, so it doesn't even really matter. That's ultimately where they were going to be anyway, probably, except if you believe the miracle of the beginning of the thing. So let's start there, actually, Orcs. You know where they were on this streak, where they have put together, we already talked about this already. It is insane you could ever win 24 games in a row, and some of them were series, most of them were like champions of their regions or top teams. Like that, at that point of G2, what did you think of how they started out? Like, what do you think of the strengths? Why were they so good?
I thought they had a better read on the meta than the other teams. I feel like they'd sort of gone into this like, so critically, we saw RNG like picking the Ezreal and the Kai'Sa, which meant like, you know, especially for RNG, you want like the most aggressive early team. You're always going to have a point where the enemy carries are valuing you. And they just leaned heavily into these team fights, which was the meta in EU. And we saw even against T1 as well, they had like this aggressive team fighting composition where they had multiple ways of forcing snap engages, and it worked really well into both of them. So I thought they had a good read on the meta, and so that gave them the ability to beat these teams in a best of one. But like even the T1 game, if like both games, it felt like you had to have some help from the other side, right? So you know, I felt more positively about G2 than I did before the tournament, but I think people were going like overboard. But the crazy thing to me, because I feel like, you know, them having those 2 wins and having a better read the meta, and then the other teams catching up would have been one thing. But the thing that was insane, like I feel like the word of the day is whiplash, is that they regressed. Like they were somehow ahead of the curve, and then it's not even that they got caught up with, they like went backwards. And like that one they had against PSG with like the Corki made for caps, I was like, what am I seeing? And like against RNG, the Yumi Photogramus, and then the flashless Riven, I was like, the thing is, if they'd come into Rumble Stage and done that, and then they'd improved, I'm like, yeah. But it's the fact it went the other way around. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, I remember like some people were saying like, oh, you know, they're undefeated, they're 4 on the Rumble Stage, they can afford to take it seriously. And I'm like, dude, they were in a position where you could have realistically seen them. They could have gotten like first seed if they continued.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, and first seed is broken because it's guaranteed finals. Because you know
they could pick EG.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you could have had RNG and T1 kill each other, and oh my, it would have been. And people were like, I don't know. I feel like they're not
the Rumble Stage. They started out as an old wise man, and you've seen all of everything. Eventually, there was just a baby at the end, like, I'm even alive. Spoiler, like,
Edgeman buttons.
All right. I'm going to push back on some of this. I actually didn't hate the Yuumi in the game versus RNG. What I hated was the way the Yuumi was played. And by that, I mean randomly dying in the laning phase in a 2v2 by mispositioning. I think that if G2 plays that lane more passively and they're able to scale into the late game with the Yuumi, and they have like Ezreal, Riven, and Viego with a Yuumi on top of them. Also, the Riven not running Flash was incredibly dumb. But like, why the fuck do you need the teleport? You should just run Flash Ignite and then played around the top side while Flackhead sat and Yuumi sat under the tower scared, and then just played for late game. So I didn't hate the composition. I hated the way that G2, basically, the one thing they couldn't do was just die randomly early on in the bot lane and let Gala and Ming run out of control with the game, which is exactly what they did. And then without the flash on the Riven, you don't have a reliable source of engagement, especially if you're already behind. But I think if you have flash and you have a Yuumi on that Riven, and that Riven has a few kills, that becomes very, very scary. So I didn't hate the theory of it. I think the execution was fucking awful.
I think a problem for me, though, is that for me, like, Targetmaster's biggest strength when he was back in the ERLs is like his ability to roam and move on the map. Like, that was a big aspect of why he was so successful there. And also, specifically, like, one of the issues that came is, like, for me, the reason stylistically why G2 are good in RNG is, like, Caps is a very strong laner. Like, your Faker and Xiaohu are not the strongest lane, or, like, individual carries of their regions. Like, you think of LPL, you think Knight and Rookie. You think of LCK, and although Showmaker's been a bit rougher this year, it's like Showmaker, Chovia, like these individual big carries.
The last few years, yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But Caps is the big carry for EU, and you saw him in that game, like, really giving it to Xiaohu. Like, he was so much better individually in the laning phase, but Wei just set up a 10. And the problem is when you have this Yuumi, who, I mean, admittedly, he did mess up, but also is like kind of trapped in lane
very
a bit more.
Messed. Like that.
Yeah, 100%, like 100% badly. But like, in my mind, if you had I think if you had a support who could be more active, you could be able to maybe dislodge Wei from mid lane and then allow Caps to play the map. Because honestly, I think this is how G2 should play, is you just invest incredible resources into Caps to get control of mid lane. Once he's got control of mid lane, he can just control the map, especially if you like shut down Xiaohu. Like, that was my big reasoning why I thought there'd be a good matchup. You trap Xiaohu in lane, then you give some resources bot lane towards Flackhead, who is a more team fighting focused AD carry. Like, he's not the strongest laner, and that's like my thought process of how they would stylistically match up to them. But I think the Yuumi, that's why it didn't work for me. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely very egregious execution issues. It definitely wasn't just
yeah. So I think like the problem for me was not necessarily, I can see the theory behind the draft. It was some of the summoner choices and then the way that they played the draft that was the issue. Because I thought the draft was okay for G2, and I thought they just survive into the late game. Well, all of a sudden they're going to be very scary, but then they just completely ran it in the.
By the way, you've just said another cursed name, which opens up my demon Pandora's box of another topic that may indeed destroy your sanity. You ready for this one, Ox? No, I'm not going back into the other topic. Don't worry about that. This is still in League of Legends. Right, this is the one. You've just said the name Flackhead. And if anyone knows that, that is a cursed term for anyone who appears on camera to say, because of two reasons. One, he won 24 games in a row in the ULCS title, LEC title. So obviously he must be the best, right? Or you're a hater. And secondly, because he's Spanish and the Spanish community is enormous and go mental and go ham as fuck for the Spanish players, you also, I mean, even if he gets involved himself, you will get reassured to fuck. In fact, here's the thing. That's scary for a lot of people. A lot of people that'll destroy their mentions. They'll ratio the fuck out of me. Flackhead, come at me, bro. Ratio me. I want that engagement. But okay, normal people don't. So the discussion, the problem is it's hard to separate all that ambience out and actually talk about who he is as a player. Because I feel like it's the Gala story all over again, dude. It's like, the problem is, all the people I know who are experts about League, sort of either publicly or privately, do say, look, he's obviously not the best fucking EU AD carry. In fact, there's obviously even people who might not even be in LEC that might be as good. Like, it's just that he's fitting this team well. He plays his champions well. Now, here's the problem. I do notice people piped down like a motherfucker once they stopped that 24-0 streak, and suddenly we're having like killless games and stuff. So I want to get this sense for like, Orcs, where do you come down on this? Obviously, it's a tricky one. You got to be careful how you explain it. But how do you characterize the Flackid story? Because I just feel like my problem is just this. I don't give you elite status unless you like consistently do it. You have to really show me you're the best.
I mean, for me, the only two world-class players on G2 are the mid-jungle. And I feel like Flackid, my concern for this team coming in this tournament was, like, I thought the bot lanes for T1 and RNG are, like, phenomenal. Like, I mean, it goes without saying T1, like, that's a no-brainer. But I thought, like, the gap there was too big. I thought Gala and Ming, especially with the meta we're currently in, like, the gap there is too big. And ultimately, like, to me, Targamas has been, as I said, in the URLs, was someone who's, like, very good at, like, finding opportunities to pair up with his jungler. And Flackid, I mean, he's good. If you give him gold, you put him in a team fight, especially when you're playing those compositions, he'll do his job.
Yep.
I feel like he's not quite there, which is fair enough. You know, he's near the roster, but like people
Also
were coming
rookie.
up. Yeah, I saw people making comments like, dude, and I know like some of it's like the hype, but they're saying like Flackid best AD carry in the world, and I'm like, I can make a list of people like. I mean, like, because that's the problem is that when you say stuff like that, it's so ludicrous that you kind of take away from like the positives, right?
Yeah.
Because as part of that big win streak, he was having some really solid performances and he was
Sure.
delivering. But then because people are just like saying these ridiculous things, I'm just like, please stop talking. Just yeah. So that's my view. I think he does his job for the team, but it's really about the mid jungle. And that was my concern matching in a T1 or RNG is that the bot gap would be a big burden to overcome. And if mid jungle don't win and then able to move that pressure downwards, I think they would just collapse.
I mean, it's also just, I think, true that the majority of G2's win came off of Caps absolutely popping the fuck off. I mean, Caps had some insane individual performances, crazy outplays, very big highlights in the first couple of days of the Rumble stage. And yes, they won the last two against EG when Caps was struggling a bit in the top lane on Gwen. And certainly, but again, we touched on this earlier, Flackid and Targamas had a freebie of a lane into Ezreal Galio and were able to capitalize on that. And good for them. And Flackid, I think, did do a lot that game on Kai'Sa. And I think that, like you say, he does his job. But if we're actually talking about who is doing the carrying on this team, it is Caps. And like, if Caps isn't there, and you know, I think to pivot this conversation too, we have to talk about Broken Blade a little bit because he's been kind of non-existent. He hasn't been the reason I would say they lose a lot of the time.
Remember, before the Caps like explosion in playoffs, they essentially played through Broken Blade. Yes. That was how the team worked.
But Broken Blades, I don't know what G2's read on the meta has been because like his Vladimir has not been. I mean, it's been there. It hasn't been like a reason they're winning and losing the games. It certainly hasn't been wowing me as some sort of Gwen counterpick, which is what they seem to want to do with it. It's his most played champion at this tournament. And I don't think we look at it and be like, yeah, it was really the Vlad difference that carried that game. You know, his Riven performance, I think, was, you know, you needed more in that game because he was going to have to carry the early game and presumably have a big impact with the Yuumi on top of him in the late game. But he's been kind of just split pushing, like showing up kind of late to team fights on Vladimir and like cleaning some stuff up sometimes, or like running away from a team fight after he's been there late. I think he did a very good job playing into the Tryndamere on the Jax, but they did his, like, the Evil Geniuses game, in my opinion, was G2 understanding their win conditions and doing their job and capitalizing on a bot lane lead and just kind of waiting for those like item break points where they outscaled. And that's fine. I mean, that's good play, right? It's knowing when your composition has these advantages and pushing them. But Broken Blade has not been a standout player, and I don't really get the Vlad picks that are coming in because it doesn't seem to be having a huge effect on the outcome of G2's matches.
Things I feel like he could have been, if they were utilizing correctly, exactly what the team needed. Because like, you know, they can play through him if they need to, but also something that I wish we could do for Bin is they could just stick him on a tank, right? And he can function very well in that role, and it has been part of the big success.
Mega on, yeah.
Yeah, and so it means that, you know, if you do want to invest resources on the bot side and you want to lean away from him, you know you can put him on something stable who's going to be relevant later. If you do want him to have a carry role, if you're on red side, if you want to have counter pick from him, that's also a viable option. I feel like one of the big strengths that he has in this tournament is that they've shown they can play with him in doing a diverse amount of styles, but then it feels like they've just been putting him in these really weird scenarios. As you said, the Vlad just like consistently hasn't really worked effectively.
It's
And
not
I
that
feel
it's
like
been bad, guys. It just hasn't done anything.
yeah, and I mean the whole point, like if if you're playing into Gwen, you either need to crush Gwen or you need to like somehow manage to match her impact in the later stages
Yep.
and be more relevant, which is hard. But the Vladimir's kind of just been there, and it's like there's definitely other things you could have picked that could have just been present there and then be more impactful later on. So, no, I think hopefully we get to see G2 like reflect on their sort of stinky streak, and then I feel like they could definitely take a game of T1 if they came in. They were sort of like setting up Caps to be successful, and then the rest of the team were just essentially playing their role. It could definitely be enough to take a game, but it's just been such a weird dynamic. And that's the crazy thing is that they started the Rumble stage so well, and then it
Sure.
just completely flipped backwards.
And
I mean, to be
especially-
fair, that's why though, because you look at the beginning, they were just playing him on the horn and stuff like that. Like they were just doing these other comps. And the thing to me is this: we have a saying in English. It's called "you flattered to deceive." It's like you looked promising, but they didn't quite make it. Like just these drafts are getting you hype. If you think he's a carry player, they can play through. It's like Jax. Oh yeah, baby. That's just whatever. That Riven game, that's like, holy fuck, imagine if this Riven gets going, Monty, and it has a fucking Yumi on it. Right. Nah, never really arrived at the station, did it? So I'm sorry. At the moment, yeah, this is the thing. Like, he just hasn't really been like the.
I mean, Vlad's the same way. It's like, oh yeah, Vlad's gonna scale, and then he's gonna, ult and do all this AOE damage in a team fight and completely fuck people up. And he's just kind of like standing there on the outside, getting low, and then pooling away. And it's like, well, I guess he absorbed cooldowns, but I think there are other champions that can do that too. If that's the fucking
very anemic Vlad player, basically.
I'm gonna say, like, I feel like because we've seen like the Ghost Ignite Vlad, and I feel like it's not as nearly as egregious as a Riven, but it's like clearly this is something that's shown up in scrims. It's like a response to the Gwen, but it's like I feel like not having flash on Vlad, like, because the thing is like having the Ignite and the Airy, because I know they want to take Ghost because they don't have phase rush, but having Ignite and Airy, it's not like we don't see Vlad's crushing Gwen in lane. Like we haven't seen that in this matchup. And I'm like, if you had like flash go to these team fights, like you do the channel E into flash R combo and just like absolutely nuke someone, then I'd be like, yeah, fair play. Like, yeah, you didn't crush Gwen in lane, but you're actually doing this. But like,
I mean, he's going rocket belt, so he like sort of has that. Sort of.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it's like Kennen, right? Kennen will often go rocket belt, but if you also have flash, like it just amplifies it more. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's nearly as egregious as the Riven, but definitely unsure about that one. It's kind of weird. We like, I feel like another one that was kind of like definitely scrim meta is the Callista, because we barely saw that in the group stage. And then it came to Rumble, and day one, it was 100% pick ban. And like teams have just like been like, clearly this must have just been popping off in scrims.
Yeah, I agree
and I feel like
it doesn't look good in the games. It does not look good in these games. Yeah.
But it kind of also matches, like when you think about scrims often tend to be more aggressive. Teams, if there's like a 10k goldie, teams just go, okay, call it 50 minutes in. Like I could imagine, a bot lane picks Callista, absolutely stomps you the bot lane. The game's just over. Like, wow, call this game. Damn, Callista's broken. I guess we have to ban that next time we're on stage. And then really when it comes into these actual stage games, players don't play nearly as aggressive.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, like Callista is actually the 5th most banned champion at MSI, so it's 27 bans. But it's only 7.
Who's trained on this?
It's
Who
only
is the mystery man
in games.
It's champ broken. Come on.
In games, it's only 7 and 5. And in many of the games, had a different AD carry been picked, you would have said, well, the team probably would have done better, especially like T1 really was not good with the Callista, right? And the 4 more banned champions in it are Lucian, who has 100% win rate at 3-0, right? Is the most banned. Ahri is number 2, 65% win rate, 15-8. Wukong is number 3, 65% win rate, 13-7. And LeBlanc, 62% win rate, 8-5. So Callista just doesn't seem really to be in the same tier as some of these other champions, include like, even though the success, I guess, has been there almost 60%, it just feels like when good teams play it, it's often a reason they lose.
That's even the mystery, Monty. Like, if of all the people, at least Gumayu should look good on it. It'd be like, right, you obviously had a bunch of scrims where he's got like 20 kills and he was just unplayable and he fucked the lane completely and he never even had a game. It's like, he looked garbage. Like, in fact, his was people didn't even say he was bad. They were just like, why even draft it? That was the whole fucking topic on Twitter, wasn't it? It was like, why is this even in the draft for T1? That was like causing people to question the whole coaching staff. Which apparently is just, apparently, to be fair, if you are the coaching staff at T1, because you are supposed to be perfect, it's like you just misbreathe and they're like, fire him, Forget about the fucking Nazi. They're so wild, these fans. They're so wild.
I just think in a meta that is so much about like burst damage and assassinating somebody, like waiting 5 seconds for Callista to get a bunch of spears in someone it just doesn't happen in reality. You know, in reality, like there's an Ari or a Nocturne on top of you just fucking you up, and or somebody is already dead and there's like some reset, like Viego's like already taken over somebody's body, and you're just like
Basically, Callista's like having 20 minutes of foreplay for a quickie.
Yeah.
I've only 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes before I have to go back to the fucking ice cream machine.
You know, the crazy one for me is the Vi, and that teams have been like banning it. And I feel like it's, you know, because when it first came out, we're kind of like, you know, like he made it work, but it was kind of like, it didn't feel like it was like this relevant thing. And then this is why I feel like it's kind of similar to Calista in the sense that like teams are like, even RNG still banned it against them. And I guess there's always that element of, okay, you don't have much experience playing against Vi, we don't want to deal with it. And you can definitely talk up like the fact just that point and click lockdown. But it's like, I mean, the biggest one is like, we literally saw T1 ban Waze Volley Bear, which was just mind blowing to me.
That was
like,
funny.
some of the bans that come out,
that's
I'm like,
just free kills, man. He just walks into you on Volibear.
that flash under tower.
Where he goes,
my god, I was
the gank where he tried to like.
I was losing my mind.
He literally will walk into towers for you. It's incredible. He did this in LPL playoffs too. He was just like, well, time for me to go feed the top lane. He just like walk under the tower and like the other top lane get a kill and be like, okay, I guess.
It actually makes me wonder if he just like really doesn't enjoy playing it, and every time his team makes him play, it's like, oh, you put me on it again? Like, I'll set you up. Actually, I think the most hilarious one was I think it was the first T1 game where T1 banned like 4 junglers, and I actually said this, like I was speaking to the casters, and I was just like, imagine if they just ban like a ton of junglers, and you could just imagine like Waze sitting there to the coach, and he's like, "Oh, what can you play here?" And he's like, "Well, Volibear is still open." And I saw that, and I was like, "Oh Lord, they've cracked him, they've sussed him." But then, fortunately, the Ezreal blind pick kind of was more relevant there into the Kai'Sa.
Gumi used to just been bad on Ezreal. I don't know. That's just not his champ for whatever reason.
By the way, though, I do low-key actually have like a sort of like perverse love of when that happens with the draft. Like I remember a classic example, if you remember, Monty, was the infamous one where fucking WE beat with that bullshit team beat GE Tigers at the fucking IEM, that TSM one, and it was literally something mental. Like they were banning something out that actually was the champion that you would like feed or not be that good on, and it was making him pick something that he was really good at. He was really so whatever way around, or maybe no, it was Kuro. So I can't remember what way around it was.
Kuro played Yasuo for the first time ever in those playoffs, and he was fucking terrible.
And it basically just baited him into actually feeding because of what was available. It's like, oh, that's genius. Because obviously you don't really design the draft that way. Like they are actually required to just be compelled to fucking come like a moth to the flame.
I just love how the coaching staff. Kuro's like. Yeah, Kuro's the worst player in this roster, and the coaching staff in a playoff, like it was only a best of 3. Kuro's like, hey coach, can I play Yasuo? And they're like, should I let the worst player on my team play a carry champion for the first time ever in this unforgiving best of 3? It wasn't a best of 5. Coach is like, you go for it, Kuro. And he's fucking in.
Because you know the worst thing, if people don't know, that was also, if you remember this, we're talking now about season 5. That was when, like, as much as like the Korean dominance was there, people did forget it was mainly T1. Like T1 is what had established that. All the other Korean teams went and thought, well, we're all unbeatable. We can do stuff like pick the skins against them. We can do whatever we want, really, at this point in time. It's like, not really, no. Like, you can definitely fuck this up. You can definitely trying to style on them ain't good. Like, because the problem with that is when you do that, by the way, you're just thinking of the hilarious post game shit. Like, lol, I don't even play that. I haven't even given anything away. And can you see what I'm doing to him, though? He's shit. Because I'll tell you a hilarious random story, because you know the guy. Lurpis from CSGO and 1.6 Tommy, who works obviously with the Immortals Gaming Club and with us through other stuff. Back in his teams back in the day, he used to be an in-game leader in Finland in Counter-Strike. And his brother was a player on his team, was a very good player. But some of the stars on his team, the Finns have a very weird sense of humor, right? It's like a drinking culture where you just do mad shit when you're drunk, basically. And they, just as a joke, they decided the night before they were playing some shitter team. I think it was a team from like Greece that wasn't even relevant in Counter-Strike. They decided as a joke, they wouldn't tell Lurpis this, but they were just going to swap mice and just use, because they used totally different mice, and just use a different mouse. Because again, it was going to be, I think it was actually like the UK team Goldberg. They thought it was going to be hilarious because when they win, they were going to go like, lol, we've used our mice, and they lost the game, obviously. And then so afterwards, Lurpis was like, wait a minute, what And then he realised it, great. So we're just doing shit like this now. Like, can we just win the game? We are professional gamers, please. And now I said, all I want to know is how are we doing this in 2022? What's going on now? Why are we back there again? I'm styling.
Yeah. I think to the like T1 point though, I think that this T1 roster, if you look at the games they've been playing, yeah, I think they thought, okay, let's force way onto the Volibear in this game. Let's see what happens. Turns out that again, they were up early. They certainly had every opportunity to win that game. Zeus had a pretty substantial advantage, and they ended up just totally throwing it away. And like, it's surprising to me because they played a lot of poke compositions, especially around Zeus's Jace during the regular season before Jace was nerfed. But for whatever reason, Gumayusi just doesn't seem to be a particularly good Ezreal player. And this is where you would hope, if you're T1, that Teddy was still on your roster. Because I promise you, I've said this before, but I promise you, T1 would have subbed Teddy in by this point in time. They would have been very tired of Gumayusi's bullshit by the time they lost a couple of games in the Rumble stage. And it looks like it would have been a better meta for Teddy overall. And that's the reason why they kept Teddy around after they cut all of the rest of the players. Remember, they went from a 10-man roster to a 6-man roster halfway through last year. And they kept Teddy in their pocket because Gumayusi is unreliable. He's not... You would hope that he develops eventually into a reliable player, but he is a risk taker. He's very aggressive. And like, sometimes the meta doesn't suit that, or sometimes like, if he is on a cold streak, he's a streaky player, and you just need to get him the fuck out of there so you have somebody more reliable that you can work with. And that's all they need right now. Like, Zeus is fucking hard carrying this. Zeus is having an amazing tournament. Like, if they just had some guy who is willing to sit under the turret and just farm and not int and like not position badly, just let Zeus and owner fucking carry you.
That's also why I actually think this tournament looks so messy, because you've got these like 3 mega super experienced, like amazing all Hall of Fame mid laners that can do whatever they want in the game, or they crush the lane or whatever. Then in ADCs, it's like, it's all bloody people who played like a year or two. They're all like mega rookies, or they weren't the guy that you just put everything in and he just make the decisions in the game and they fuck up in lane. And it's been a very sloppy tournament. Like, I think how rarely you've even seen a clean game of this.
And then Bin as well for RNG. Like, it's not the AD carry thing. I mean, this gets talked about a lot, but that like going into this year, Shahu literally said he would only swap to mid if it was Bin or Breathe top lane. But they try to get Knight. They try to get Knight in the mid lane, and I just think like how sick
that's
that
a wet dream right there, isn't it? That
yeah,
would be pretty nice.
Shahu top, Knight mid, like, oh man. Well, unfortunate. It's just one of those things where you just think
especially because, mate, when I think of all the games I've seen Knight play, where he is a fucking absolute beast, especially in all the team fights, it's like, mate, if he had sort of Xiaohu piloting his team,
yeah,
I mean, I think Ming as well. This is the dream. Just go mid. Just get the group as a team. Go right there. We get the fight. That'd be amazing, mate. It'd be fucking sick.
It'd be sick. Oh man,
wouldn't it? By the way, if you don't know what makes the LPL so infuriating is you're all thinking there's some amazing roster moves. It's always the roster moves that don't bloody happen in the offseason that you hear the rumour of. And they're always the super teams. They're always the ones where it's like, what the fuck? Like that one where when Uzi I was going to retire, they were just going to slot Jackie Love straight into RNG, which was like, holy fuck. Imagine unleashing Jackie. Like, mate, it's always the ones that don't happen that kill you. They're the ones.
I don't understand what happens in the offseason in the LPL, honestly, because like even like V5, Rookie wanted to be on the same team as the Shy. And then I don't know actually specifically what happened, but something broke down and they ended up getting split up. But they wanted to be on the same team.
You know, they both, you'll love this, Monty. They both claim publicly, but we both wanted to get on the same team. But somehow, yada, 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 we ended up on different teams. In fact, bizarrely, the Shy didn't get onto Rookie's team. That's like some prisoner dilemma shit. It's like, the Shy was just in here a minute ago. He was talking bad shit on you. He said he's probably not going to sign you. It's like, all right, fuck. I mean, I don't know if I should. Then they go to the Shy, like, yeah, Rookie says he's out on you. He said, sorry. What is this, mate? Like, if you just actually group negotiate, you get in there, don't you? Because that makes it sound to me, if I have to say, because I've read all the interviews of the Shy for years, and I've told you the thing I can't handle because it's so funny is he thinks he's just like Rookie and plays just as like well-rounded and not abusive. And so what I've always thought is that because so many of the other members of IG were so flawed, like the jungler was a bloody idiot who could only do like level 3 ganks. Baolan is Baolan, who I assume he just owns all of the LPL or secretly in a fucking fund somewhere because I don't know how else to get playing. Jackie Love never knew that he wasn't actually Uzi being played through all the time. He just thought I'd be pushed up all day long in a solo lane team. And so in this scenario, I always thought Rookie was just like, well, you know what? better the devil you know. The Shy, yeah, fuck it, mate. See with me till the end. But then when he finally got a chance to get away, he was like this. He's got, oh yeah, I'll see what I can do to get in the same team as you. And he goes in. I wouldn't have a problem if the Shy wasn't here. Don't tell him that. But listen, if I, all I'm saying is, if you just got a different top lane, I'd probably sign it. Yeah, Shy, it didn't work out, mate. What do you know? Wires were crossed. There's miscommunication. You don't know Chinese that well, do you? You know what? Let's get him next time. Couple of years from now, the last dance. That's right. Anyway, I'm going to go talk to Rich now. Rich, you know what a tank is, mate? Give me a break. There's a sort of subtext behind this story.
It actually did end up being his undoing as well, because Rich horribly inted the playoffs.
I know.
Yeah. But it was even it's so weird as well, because everyone knows the Shy is phenomenal when he's playing well, but everyone always gives him a pass. And the most egregious one, which probably a lot of people wouldn't have seen this split, there was a game this split where he played Victor top with Grasp, and he had Ghost and Teleport as summoner spells. That sounds pretty bad, right? The enemy team had a Jarvan, right? So all this Jarvan did was just come top on repeat, because you have no flash for the whole game. Yep. And then he hits level 6 and you're trapped in the Cataclysm. And he just he went 0, I think it was 0-6-0 at one point. And it's just any other player would be
you see,
just so everyone be at his throat, but the Shy, they're oh, it's Shy. He just he does that sometimes. It's so weird, but everyone just gives him a pass.
You see, you're not understanding the theory. You just put the gravity field in the Jarvan ult, and then ult on top of both of you.
Yeah, there you go.
Genius.
There you go. That's the thing is one on the angle of the whole thing of fucking he does the thing about the Shy is, he doesn't have the off switch when he starts to win. He believes the Robert Frost poem, the way out is through. He basically is that classic story of Kobe Bryant, right? Where when Kobe Bryant was injured and he was doing a documentary, he was with this documentary filmmaker, and they went to watch a different team play. It was the Nets, who had Deron Williams was their star point guard, right? And in the game, Deron Williams missed his first 9 shots. So he just stopped, because he's a point guard. He just distributed the ball and he ended the game, I'm going to say either 0 for 9 or 2 for 11. And basically Kobe turned to this guy who's the documentary guy and goes, see, that would never happen to me. And the guy's thinking, what do you mean? You never missed 9 shots. He goes, no, if I go 0 for 9, I'm going to go 0 for 30. Because that was his philosophy. His philosophy was, I'm going to always try and turn it around, and I don't give a fuck. I am the best. That is the Shy. And it's why, by the way, if you don't know, he has had some of the most pathetically ridiculous, this should not be possible to win this game. This fight shouldn't be possible to win. It is his genius and his madness. That is the real problem with that story, isn't it? That's just who he is as a player, mate. It just is.
The problem...
No, by the way, here's the one reason. I actually really wanted V5 to win. There's only one reason I'm glad they didn't. Because if fucking Rich, the faker of hots, think about this, if he'd have won the LPL, Theon would probably already be on his 5th article about this exact story, because that's narrative porn to him. That's the intersection of those. It's that's some unholy alliance, Monty, that never the twain shall meet. Because that would be if Flash came and played support for fucking Faker now and won worlds. Again, Theon says, what the fuck? All my worlds are interceding. The signal noise, please. What the numbers? What do they mean, Mason?
The thing about the Shy, though, that's so funny, and the concept in League of Legends of the only way out being through, is that it would be it works to a certain degree in traditional sports, but it would be if you were trying to play basketball, but every time the other guy scored 5 points, he would grow half an inch, and then being well, if I just keep doing it, I'm gonna win eventually. It's there's a snowball mechanic in this game, guys. The more you ins, you can't just keep trying to fight him, because it just gets exponentially harder every fucking time you do it, right?
Here's the joke. Because Rookie was imbalanced, I actually believe, it's a side conversation for another day. We sort of went in all that GOAT episode. I actually believe on raw body of work of actual performance, the Rookie is actually the greatest mid laner to ever play this game. I know I'm not talking about accomplishment, but if you want, go and put all those comments about all the accomplishments and Bengi and all that, yeah, that's great. Give us all the engagement. I actually think if you just look on how they played, tick the nameplates off, who they played against, I think he's just put too many years in a row. So the joke is, the only way Riot could actually essentially give a comeback mechanic in a game with Rookie was to put the Shy in the fucking top lane. That's actually the only thing. That is the blue shell. The blue shell drops out the back of your trunk and then goes under the front and goes under your wheels. It drops out the trunk and that's comes out the front of the engine and goes under fuck,
The blue shell treadmill.
The blue shell was inside the building all along. Give me a break. You know what I mean? What a ridiculous human being he is. Still, please keep doing interviews, because his interviews are amazing, like I said. I can't even believe it's actually him. It's almost there's a different personality comes out in the interviews, mate.
Oh man, as far as the rookie point goes, I mean, I think it really depends on. Certainly, he's had more weights on his team, right? Over the years, but it's especially if Faker wins MSI or wins another, like, wins Worlds, for example, this year. Like it is, he has built quite a legacy, and if he can do it against the top Chinese teams that are being sent, it would kind of solidify that in many ways. I think what the very disappointing thing is that Rookie isn't at this tournament, because that would have been fucking excellent to watch. Like, I mean, we talked about this before the event happened, but Rookie and Faker have actually very rarely played each other, because Rookie left Korea after 2014, and by the time Rookie's team was good, Faker's team was bad in 2014, so we didn't get to see very much of that matchup.
And the madness was season 9. They were supposed to meet in that bloody season 9 MSI final, but then G2 happened, and then, oh God forbid, fucking Team Liquid happened. That was the ridiculous one, wasn't it? The miracle run.
I feel like when I was at MSI, so much I was just thinking, oh man, I would love to see top esports here. Oh man, I would love to see V5 here. I'm just like, obviously, we'll likely get that at Worlds, but just.
Are we? I feel like LPL is very volatile. We never know who the fuck's going to show up to Worlds.
That's probably accurate, but we'll get more like teams at Worlds. Yeah. But I just want to see like more teams interact, because I think, especially with T1's like skill check style, that is like RNG vs T1's going to be a fantastic series. But like T1 against top esports
would be fucking great.
Oh my God, it would have just been like so much raw League of Legends skill. And it would devolve into a fiesta. I know it would just devolve into a fiesta, and it would be fantastic. And people would be like, this is one of the greatest series of all time. Some of the purists would be like, oh well, actually, they didn't crash on wave 3 and then rotate here or something. But it's just like, no, you just want to see them run at each other and clash. And I would have honestly loved that. And V5 as well. Like, I think a lot of people look at the LPL and were like, they were hoping that V5 could have gone. And not to say RNG's definitely going to represent as well and do a good job, but. Yeah, I just wish, like, the fact we get 2 internationals a year, and then obviously MSI, we only see 1 team from the region. It just like whenever it comes to MSI, you're just like, I can't wait for Worlds. I just want Worlds to be now.
Yeah, it's a pretty flawed system. Very, very. For actually appreciating great games of League of Legends. It's people are like, well, international tournaments are the best time of year, but it's like you're giving a man in the desert dying of thirst a sip of water, and then that man is saying, yes, this is the best water ever. It's not. It's like brackish and kind of salty, but you're just really thirsty. That's it. It's tainting your.
And then someone's like, there are whole oases in other games like CS:GO and Dota where people just splash and play in the water. Like, this madness, he's a fool. Drive the heretic out into the desert. You will die there without our precious strip of water. Give me a break.
We have all the water. Don't go looking for more water. Don't you do that.
Water is a lie. There is no water. Now back to the holy drip.
Actually, be a fire skit. The Mad Max style.
Oh, don't worry, guys. Listen, I don't want to tease too much, but all I'm going to say is this: at some point this year, I'm going to actually set up a green screen as well, and me and Monty are actually going to start. We're going to be in remote location, but we can do some fire shit, can't we? We're on the city camera. We can do some good stuff, I reckon. For Worlds,
it'll be mega
let's do it for Worlds.
Too. Yeah, we could definitely
do it for
that.
Worlds.
But it is hilarious, because it is, being in Riot is like living in a post-apocalyptic esports society where you might have read some books about previous esports, but Riot's here telling you they invented it in this post-apocalyptic world, and that they are your god holding all the water.
Are you ready? Obviously, Worlds is like in the road when they find that one can of Coke, and he has to treasure it like, oh, it's just Coke, mate. There's actually better drinks out there. I don't know if you're aware of that. Like, yeah, but to him, it's like so precious. Oh, it's the remnant of the great era that came before the crash. Like.
So I have an interesting question about format before we go into this. Thorin, this is like one of those red button meme choices, but I think that the Swiss tournament for the Swiss format for the major is actually, I would rather see that than than the MSI format.
The problem is they both have big flaws of their own. Like,
but I'm just saying, if I had to pick between the two of them, I would pick the Swiss format.
Bearing in mind, every league international tournament involves the round robin. I'd like it just like a one-off. Let's just see what it's like. That would maybe potentially be cool to just give it a little bit of variety in that regard. The real problem I have is this: we've gone into it a million times, but they do always do this, where they go, right, So obviously we'd have like 3 weeks, and then the first 2 weeks would be one format, and then within that, teams would each need to play once each a day, and then there would need to only be a break, and then they got. But within that though, what format would you suggest? It's like, what the fuck? Why have you just put like 10 rules in there that you just made up out your ass? Like, none of those are rules. Like, how about you start at the start? Do I have 3 weeks? I tell you what, I can do a fucking lot now, Monty. Me and you have already done it, mate. We can bring in all sorts of formats that work there, but we got to start at the beginning. They always seem to, like, Riot's whole thing seems to still be this. This is what's sad, because this has always been the logic everyone's used. It's always like this. Like, yeah, but there's a flaw in that new system you're suggesting. There's all sorts of flaws in the system now, you idiot. The question is it better, or should we? What else would it select for? Like, there's flaws in every system, isn't there? Because you know the classic old one against double M was always there's no bracket resets. Like, mate, I'll take the bracket reset out for the sake of everything else I get, you idiot. Like,
exactly.
The difference is, yeah, guess what? There's no bracket set here because you get all the fucking bracket in all the other games. Like, I think the way up on that one's easy to do, mate. That's an easy choice all day long. Easy. Or in fact, if you don't know, by the way, go back in time and destroy the lower bracket, the LPL. Holy fuck, the last 3 years of different orcs. There's a lot of teams aren't those, a lot of teams aren't champions. Oh my god. By the way, fucking Doinby, you're probably sitting on rings on rings on rings. It's probably like Sonic or something.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I mean, I feel like a big thing was when previously, like, having the lower bracket, having these big runs. I feel like you get so much. There's so many more clashes, and I think so much when I think back to like historical League of Legends tournaments. It's like that kind of thing. You're like, man, wouldn't it be great if we'd seen this team play this team? And it's just like there's so often when you have like a tournament where like you don't actually get to see the teams you want to play against each other, and you end up just like missing so many matchups that could be so interesting. And realistically, I think like
I'm not still salty about the fact that we didn't get to see a KT-IG rematch after KT lost in the quarterfinals. Like, what the fuck was that? We had a horrible final instead. We could have just had a sick KT versus IG rematch.
Yeah, and I feel like even you look at like Worlds last year, the two Chinese teams got drawn into it got drawn into each other, and then we end up having the Korean teams killing each other, and it's like we've seen these Korean teams play against each other so many times. It's like that's not new. Like, I'd love to see if if there was double LM, we would have got to see like RNG match up against these other teams and see how that would have gone down. And I think that's like ultimately, a lot of people are super passionate about, I want my region to win and stuff and whatever. I just want to see like how do these teams fare, like top esports T1 and all that stuff.
We've talked about this ad nauseum on this show, but we've seen one best of 5 between NA and Europe in the last 3 years, and we kind of got that because we got 6 games between G2 and EG, but that was just because of the way the groups were drawn.
Wasn't the best advertisement for your premise, Monty, but I get it. Okay.
Yeah. Look, we did kind of see it at this MSI, right? It was just stretched over multiple days, so at least it was better this time around. But if G2 and EG hadn't been in the same group, then we just wouldn't have seen it. We would have seen 2 games instead.
I'm going to spitball an idea for you, and I'm going to specifically design this because I think it's straight fire. Here's what you do instead. Right, you make that you first of all, you should the most obvious thing you would do in the year calendar, if you're anyone who knows other formats, is you would shorten the splits. That's just beyond obvious at this point in time. Look, for things like the LPL, it's going to be tough because they have a different system. I think they actually have a very good format already. I'm talking about for you LEC and LCS. I would just make the split smaller, maybe have days where you play 3 games, but you just do it that way because I want to make some more space. And I would do inter-regional exhibition matches of the champions. But are you ready for this is the kicker. The kicker's the genius. So that means in the middle of like the first split and whatever second, without an MSI, you have NA and EU champion play each other in an exhibition best of 5. But there's something at play, Monty. Are you ready? It's the dynamic I've put in play here. Whoever loses the match out of NA and EU just gets a slot taken away from Worlds. Are you ready? But then over on the other side of the world, LCK and LPL champion play. The winner gets a slot added to Worlds. Now, the reason I've done that on purpose is because since all you can really hate on and enjoy as a Western fan, now that G2's gone, is fuck the other region. Let's hope they have a worse time. It's Schadenfreude. But if you're the LPL and LCK, I'm just doing that to save the players' mental. Because if they lost a slot because of some other team and the nations, like, the internet will just be melted. So I've especially catered to the 2 regions there. That would be fire, mate. Imagine that. You'd get these exact matchups as well.
Would you want this just to keep going until like there were no Western, like you said they lose a slot.
All right, I just each year you do it. Each year you reset and you do it again.
Okay, yeah.
It's sick as well, isn't it? Like obviously then the LPL can have an extra team. Then NA loses one because like lol, EG lost it. Like that would be fun. That would be the drama right there, man. That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I mean, you could do all kinds of things if you're willing to mix up NA and EU a little bit more. So here's just an off the cuff example that I just invented. But it's like, let's say in summer, you played like a single round robin. Here's an idea. What if you just had a pool of Western seeds? So you have, let's say, six seeds that go to Worlds, right? So you play a single round robin in the summer split. So then you have all the time you would spend for the second round robin to do this. The teams are seeded 1 through 10 in each of the regions. The bottom 2 teams in each region are instantly eliminated. Now, for the other half of the summer split, you do evens and odds. So you send all the odd place teams, so like 1, 3, 5, 7 in one region, and you put them in, you send them to Europe. And then you send all the even teams, 2, 4, 6, and 8, to NA, right? Or do something like this. Then you play a double elimination 8-team bracket, and whichever teams are in the top 3 of each region are the teams that go to Worlds. And it could be, maybe it's 6 EU teams, like you don't know. But you mix the regions so you get the strongest Western teams possible, and you actually get to see a bunch of interregional competition.
What?
There's no reason that says like all like
you can do that, yeah. Do whatever you want.
You make up the rules, right? Riot just says, oh, there have to be X number of NA spots or X number of EU spots, and an NA team would definitely go to Worlds under these circumstances. There's 6
I mean,
seeds.
all I'm going to say is, like, let's be real. The reason I don't get it is it's kind of like you just said there. Riot can literally do whatever they want. They own the entire IP to the game, and no one else is even allowed to have tournaments without them saying so. So, spoiler, you have effectively been acting the entire time like you could do whatever you want within the guise of the law. I'm just too good at what I do. Don't worry about it. Just don't react, mate. It's all good. But anyway, I'm just saying, if they can do all that other shit arbitrarily, if you can find Doublelift 2K for poaching himself or whatever, or Bjergsen or whatever it was. You remember that one where they poached themselves? And like, I still can't really wrap my head around what that means. But that's just to be in a. It's like that's the sort of shit I have to explain to people who aren't in League of Legends, like the CS people. Like, what's it like over there? It's like, oh, people are getting fined for poaching themselves. Like, what's poaching? Because we're in Europe, remembering like Counter-Strike. It's like, I'll tell you another time. It's a fucking whole thing. You don't want to know about it. You know when you message each other on Messenger, yeah, we all do that. Yeah, you just have to pretend you don't do that, or if you get caught with a screenshot, like, all right then. And this is part of the process. Oh, it's very big. Yeah, it's very important. It's actually the most important thing in the whole scene. No, the stupid thing about this is, because like you say, we need to have formats that select for what we want to see. Not as in literally this team, but as in we want to get EU versus NA in a best of 5. So we've got to rejig it so that happens at some point in the tournament, right? We want to have it so that, like, as you say, the idea that, like, between them, Rookie and Faker have been to all these bloody Worlds and MSIs, and then they never meet. Like, that's like the one that happened in the NBA, Monty, because they had the 2 conferences. Right. LeBron was in the Eastern Conference, Kobe was in the other one, and there was something like 5 or 6 years where they collectively were in the final every year, never met, of course. Would have been the best meet of the entire. Never met, of course. Just off here. The whole time I played in here. There may as well be in other leagues, you know what I mean? Like, they played regular season games, it didn't matter. Never met in the playoffs. They gave me a break. Because that's the problem. Wouldn't it be cool if we had actually that story when I was saying about Rookie? And of course they played. And remember when he smashed him in that kit? That doesn't exist.
I actually can't even remember. It's been years since they. When was the last time these guys actually came up against each other?
Probably like Rift Rivals or some shite, I guess, if I had to guess. Assuming we'll count in that.
I'm sure they scrim against each other. I wish I could watch that.
I mean, they do, because there was that Joe Marr comment, right? Where he said, in response to Munch, he said, yeah, see how LNG and V5 feel about us, or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure they scrim against each other. That's not even a question. Like, the top Korean teams and top Chinese teams scrim against each other all the time, right? So, but it's just nobody's actually ever seen it.
Also, what's that anyway? It's like, mate, it's the official results that count. That's like, you ask your ma. See, she fucking thinks of me like, the fuck are you talking about?
Win rate
Don't worry about scrims, mate. Don't worry about scrims. Yeah,
what a metric.
Listen, this is why, Joe Ma, I'm sorry, to me, you're a bit of a clown show. I don't give a fuck that you got millions outside of esports. I only care about esports, you that fuck. So here's the thing, right? This is why, to me, you're a clown. First of all, you've come in and sort of claimed the whole legacy of fucking Faker, Coma, people who even acting organization.
Not only that, the entire legacy of SKT T1, which goes back 20 20 years.
I love food,
Yeah, okay.
fantasy,
Yeah.
innovation, everyone.
Okay. So let's just be clear. You didn't do that. In fact, you have spent the vast majority of T1's existence not even knowing that T1 existed. You have no idea what the fuck happened in Brood War. Be very clear about that. Very clear.
And then here's the key kicker. Are you ready for the punchline? Because you are from North America, you cannot help but be infected by the culture of North America. And so now when you represent the winningest, greatest, most dominant org in the history of esports, you're cashing in scrim books when you lose BO1s. Homie, you are the monster. You are Frankenstein's monster. That's what we were trying to destroy. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah,
You tell you what, fake is sick in scrims, bruh. What are you talking about? This is some JoJo level shit.
Let me make an analogy for you, okay? This would be like if Joe Marsh was in Star Wars, okay, and he's Darth Vader, okay, and the rebels come and blow up the Death Star, and he's just like, but in scrims we won, guys. It's like, no, this is horribly embarrassing. You represent the ultimate power in the galaxy and an evil empire. You had a space station that could blow up fucking planets, dude, and you still fucked it up. Like, what is this? The Darth Vader saying that would be the lamest shit of all time. Be better.
To be fair, Jojo does play like he's doing a Death Star run and he turns off his fucking tracking device or whatever, doesn't he? That's kind of how he plays, just using the Force, isn't he? You know? He just gets Peter done, you're with the Force, look, Jojo. Pretend it's Fortnite, Jojo. You're going to 1v1 him. It's like, fucking hell, give me a break.
Yeah, he hasn't, Jojo Pieta actually hasn't undergone his Yoda training arc yet.
Exactly.
He's, this version of Jojo is like Luke, like fighting at Cloud City, fighting Darth Vader and just getting absolutely owned and his hand chopped off because he thinks he's better than he is. Luckily, in the story, you know, Luke does come back and I guess in this metaphor, recruit Faker to his team. I don't know how it works exactly.
Obviously, Vulcan's just some, like, I don't know, gold leader, what or whatever. Then Reggie's just like, you'd be fucking shining pats and Coruscant if you were in this fucking Rebel Alliance, Vulcan. By the way, how much worse is that fucking statement going to age, Reggie? Is Vulcan just going to like win worlds now or something, mate? Like, you have got the craziest anti-fucking jinx mechanism I've ever seen, mate. That just gets worse every moment. He just beat T1. He beat the best player in the world who's at his position, Carrier. Reggie, it can't get worse. He wouldn't be working at McDonald's, mate. He wouldn't, would he? He's really good.
The Star Wars Reggie analogy, he's like the Watto. He's like the Watto of League of Legends. He's just sitting on this shitty little planet, being a tin pot despot, owning people and thinking he's the greatest shit ever while being Jedi mind tricked.
Like, now this is pod racing. Being team, of course. I know it's bullshit. Yeah. It's complete bullshit.
So there you go. They're all our Star Wars references for League of Legends. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything because, to be fair, if you don't know, some of the Insight was always a show that had the sidebars and the tangent stuff. I will say it might be an indictment of this tournament that I think we spent as much time talking about RNG as the shy and rookie, their history, being on teams, and then teams we wish they joined and come to this tournament. Like, I think all I'm going to say is, like, when you're on holiday, you're not supposed to be lying in the hammock with a thought bubble of a better holiday where you go and do some. You're on holiday. That's supposed to be the holiday. You know, like, I can't wait till I get back and go somewhere else, like mountain climbing or whatever. Like, what is this tournament? What is it?
Hey, we got a whole drip. Be happy with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, Monty. They thought when they were hooked up with Louis Vuitton, they mastered the art of drip. Not in this particular case.
All right, let's return to the games, because like I do think as badly as G2 has done in the second round robin, like, people are going to underestimate this team. This team can win. This team can win MSI. Like, that is not. It's not a good chance, but we saw what they're capable of, and we saw what Caps on an individual level is capable of. And even though, again, it's the same thing with RNG. Is RNG as well balanced as T1? No. Can they have pop off performances on players like Gala? Yes. can G2, can Caps go Super Saiyan and win this event? He absolutely could. Like that is not an unreasonable thing to say, given the peaks that we've seen from him at this tournament. And if Broken Blade, if they get their shit together and Broken Blade stops playing weird stuff that doesn't really do anything and starts to play a little bit more meta and has an effect on this game, then he can come back into form as well. Because as you said, Thorin, they were playing through him for a lot of the season and even a lot of the playoffs on G2 before Caps got back into shape. So he's capable of carrying these games. Now, will they do that? I don't think so, but it's not like they have a 0% chance of winning this event. That's like they could absolutely upset T1.
For me as well, the way you do it's obvious. It's what Ox said earlier. It's all the fucking resources you can fit in that bad boy called Caps. You fucking put them all in and you draft everything you can to set them up. Because here's the mad thing. I know this is going to blow people's minds because anytime Faker wins LCK and goes international, they have to believe it's old Faker. I think Caps is better right now than Faker. I don't even think that's like an unreasonable statement to say.
I think he's less consistent.
Look at the highs. If I look at when they play directly, even at times, like I think overall he might be the better mid laner, especially like traditionally. Because here's the thing: Faker enables the rest of the team. Caps just carries, mate. Correct. So that would even be my way to do it. It's like, right, they can try if they want to help the rest of them out. Let's smash that lane as hard as we can. Let's trap him.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a similar thing with Xiao. I think both of these players aren't the big individual carries of the region, and Caps is, and I think you invest everything into that. And like mid is just such a broken lane because like mid is the one that has the best proximity to everywhere else on the map. So if you enable mid, you can shut down anything they're trying to do on other areas. If you can get Caps in a position where you can be strong and move. But yeah, just going to Monty's point about the T1 potentially getting upset. I feel like also we've had this knockout arrangement, which is like the highest potential for upsets. Because I think if T1 were first seed, they would just smash EG, and then whoever gets to come up against them, obviously there's a good chance. But the fact that T1 have to go through G2 esports and RNG, again, I think G2's chance is lower than RNG, but the fact that all that happens is one of them just has to have a banger series. And we've seen stranger things at MSI, which everyone's kind of referencing back in the day when we had IG losing to TL. Like that was obviously, I don't think RNG are sort of team to do something like that. But even so, like we've seen like these crazy upsets come out, so definitely possible.
But overall, I think T1, it feels like a T1 RNG finals is at hand. Yeah. I think EG probably has no chance in this matchup. So overall, I think it seems like we started the show this way when we had Ox on. We agree T1 probably going to take this one.
I've got the way you characterize it for the RNG EG series to make it simple. Like they said earlier, essentially RNG's strengths are just better version of what they've got in the fucking EG team. So the problem is this. Probably a counterintuitive point that fans often miss in analysis is you'll notice most times when you want a great final, a great match, you want conflicting and contrasting styles. That's why in combat sports they say styles make fights. Because just like in combat sports, if two people have the same style and one is slightly better, he can either A, just neutralize the other, it's a boring game, or B, he just shits on the other guy and then the other guy looks rubbish, but he's not rubbish. It's just that he doesn't have any strengths to play. He doesn't even have, that's why we were talking about earlier. One of the reasons I always loved seeing teams like Gigabyte Marines, the Buffaloes, is because it's like they know that they can't play the normal macro and meta style whatsoever. They have to be the most weirdest, fucked up David Lynch League of Legends team.
That's what G2 was historically.
They might be able to score a win and get some crazy chance to win in the game. In this particular case, I can't even envision what drafting philosophy could possibly do anything against RNG? What lane are you going to play through? Who's the pop-off? Hey, listen, if it happens, by the way, here's what's good about us being honest in a way the real desk won't be. It's because if somehow EG pulls this off, holy fuck, forget the TLI and G1. This will be the craziest Western upset ever in League of Legends. So if they can do it, God bless. The problem is, right now, I'm looking Doctor Strange through all the fucking... I can't find the one where they win. There isn't one.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah,
I
even think like people will point to RNG and be like, oh, Bin's being. I think even if Bin has the worst game of his life, RNG know what Bin can do, right? In terms of he can run a game down, they're ready for that, right? I feel like it won't even shake them. That Shaho will just go, Bin, you're useless. Go run in and die and give us some space. That'll literally be the dynamic. And I think that's the shame. Is that I think G2 were if there was going to be an upset from the West, it was going to be G2 against RNG, and missed out on that.
Also, the copium of, like, as you say, that everyone goes to, but in the finals, though, they were like behind in those. Yeah, against fucking top esports. Do you know the mechanics of some of those players? That was not evil geniuses they were playing, homies. Like, give me a break.
Yeah, I always thought
You go play top esports. See how you do in the fucking early game, mate.
that was always a weird one because I think there was this sentiment that came in because I mean a lot of people do this generally, but like T1 obviously were clearly top of the region. G2 esports and Evil Geniuses, their last two series with 3-0s, right? And RNG had like a proper fight, and so people think, oh, they got challenged, had really bad early games, therefore they're not that good. And I'm like, is that the case? Like, do you not see the fact that top esports are just like this fantastic? And it's like people discredit, like they say, oh, RNG are terrible early and top esports are terrible mid game, or maybe part of it is also the strength on the side. Like maybe top esports are fantastic early and RNG are fantastic in the mid game. And like, no, they look bad, so therefore these teams just suck. And Evil Geniuses went 3-0, so they're just better, I guess.
I'd even use this analogy because obviously, like you're saying, within context, they're all good teams. They're all top ones. This is like where they do that thing in superhero movies that I can't handle, Monty, where they have this universe, like Marvel universe, that features all these different ones. So they feature, Monty, Norse gods who can call down the power of the electricity and the thunder. They feature like beings that can just literally like fucking just like Incredible Hulk, impossible, invulnerable. And then they'll just have like a human who's got like fucking like really good
Black
Navy
Widow.
SEAL skills. And what they have to do is awkwardly and shittily write the script so they never actually fight against one of those guys that would OP destroy them instantly. And they make it so that, like, bizarrely, that they're just always getting an even matchup, that they're just like 15 out, 149, and go, oh, well, I win it, it's on the edge. They never, and the problem with MSI is that's like you've taken fucking Black Widow and she is fighting Thor, and then she is fighting the Incredible Hulk, and then finally she just fights like fucking Thanos himself with the Infinity Gauntlet, and you're going, maybe she's got a chance. It's like, in what universe, brother? In what universe? You know what I mean?
It is convenient that they just self-select. It's like it really is like a staged fight. It's like a fight card, right? Where it's
exactly.
like there are the people going for the title fight who are clearly better, and the undercard is there fighting at the same event, but they're not going to fight.
Exactly.
You have to work your way up, right? So that's why
Thanos had just gone straight to like Wakanda, just killed all the humans, then I'd go straight to like the New York, kill all the. I'd wait till the end to fight the really hard people. I wouldn't take them on first for the universe. Why would you?
Why didn't you
take an easy fight?
Why didn't you just blow up Earth? Like, what the fuck is he even doing?
Yeah, they could do that as well.
It's incredible that Earth causes him so many problems when he could just kill everybody instantly. I don't know.
There wouldn't be a movie. That's true. I mean, that's what it always is.
Well, that's the problem, though. You've hit the nail on the head, Orcs. The problem is they have creative license within that. This is reality, and the game League of Legends is not aware of any of these storylines. It just processes inputs, and the problem is if you're not as good at bashing on the keys and moving your mouse, it just goes, sorry, you lose, and actually I've delivered a rubbish game. And so that may indeed be what happens, unfortunately. Because I have to say the same thing. Like, here's the real problem of when they give the IG example. IG always had erratic elements to how they played. They already would like snowball and anti-snowball and throw. Here's the real problem. The two players, one is called Xiaohu, one is called Ming. They are not going to lose a best of 5 to EG. They are not going to let it happen. They are not going to let these games get away. They can lose a game. I cannot see them losing 3 out of 5. I don't think it can happen with players like that. Because that's like 2 captain level, like fucking anime genius level fuckers in the same team against rookies. Give me a break.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's like those two, because I mean, IG, as you said, are volatile. I was actually saying if top esports were here, it'd be fantastic. But I could have seen them coming first or coming 5th. I get like top esports, a team who are like volatile like that. Yeah. But RNG, no, it's just they will do what you expect them to do. They may not be able to beat T1, but they will do what you expect them to do. They won't lose to Evil Geniuses. So people are like presenting that whole IG thing, and it's just like, nah, different teams.
Well,
different teams.
It's also if EG is able to win and Jojo Pian is has a good performance, right? This might be the best rookie performance since literally Faker. I don't think that's going from his rookie season where he went from close to being in the top of champions to then winning champions to then winning the world championship within the context of his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. That's the thing. It would have to be. It would have to be on that level to sort of be possible. But honestly, I'll be impressed if they get a game, which sounds really, really negative. We've been pretty negative. I'll be impressed if they get a game. So
I think we all would be.
In my mind, that's the aim. Just get one.
I think G2 will win a game against them. I think
I agree.
I think T1 will fuck up their draft because I still think they're kind of unsure about what they want to do themselves, and they're going to be trying things in this best of 5 in order to suss that out for the fun.
Here's my prediction. The reason it'll give you a little bit of hype and then it'll just go away is because I think G2 will also come in confident. Like, they've had some great games here. They know anything's possible. They know they've got someone like Caps who for once maybe even has like a mismatch against bloody Faker. Right, in this world, here's what I think happens. I think they'll split the first 2 games and then T1 just wins all the rest. Because the other thing about Koreans that I've always found really hard, and Westerners just seem to intentionally ignore this, is Western teams typically come in with their idea, the best possible idea at the beginning of the veto, and they start in game 1 and they sort of have to front run a bit, and then if they can do that and they can keep the steam up, they can win the series. The Koreans, the really great Korean teams stacked with players, they can start out without even knowing how to play that team and they just get stronger as it goes on. And that's why some of the Korean game 5s in history are just like fucking masterpieces, where the other team just actually had no chance and was like, what the fuck, I thought I had a chance at that. It was only one game for all the marbles, but I never even got a lick, Because I still think, as we said earlier on before Ox came on, no matter what happens, I hope it can be a brilliant game, T1 versus RNG, but I actually do think T1 is going to win this.
I think 3-1.
Even if it feels boring to people, I just think they will. And I think, by the way, when they do, I think a lot of the drama from the group stage just goes away, evaporates the second they lift that trophy. Exactly.
I feel like for me, RNG will 3-0 EG, T1 will 3-1 G2, and then I think I'm hoping, but I think 3-2 T1 in the finals. But again, it really depends what T1 we get, whether it'll be like that close or not. But I'm hoping 3-2. I mean, 3-2 T1 would just be fantastic, and then regardless of who wins, who really cares?
Here's the problem as well. So we actually need T1 to win. I know it's going to seem weird to you because you're rooting for RNG, because think about it, you can't win either way. If RNG wins, well, logically, they're on other sides of the bracket. Joe Marsh is just going to point out they won all the scrims, didn't they? So it wasn't legit.
Also,
checkmate. Checkmate. Yeah.
The ping issue being from home, like there's so many asterisks to this event. If T1 doesn't win, it's going to be a fucking shit show.
I think it's a shit show either way, because if T1 do win, it's like, oh my god, they lost even with that. If T1 lose, it's like, oh my god, this is why T1. I mean, ignoring that, I feel like T1 winning would be the best case, because I mean, China's been so dominant recently in internationals anyway. T1, like people saw this team come out of the region. It was like, this is by and far the best Korean team. Like, this wasn't just they had like a good playoffs run. This is like, this is the best Korean team at the moment. There's like a gap between the rest, I would say. And if they lose here, then people are going to question the LCK. I think Worlds is going to be a better tournament for China, because they tend to send 4 stacked rosters that are very different stylistically, and then all we need is one to hit the right meta. Like, you'll get one team who FPXs it and gets knocked out early because the meta's wrong and they have a horrible read, and then one team will just be like EDG, where they have the right run.
FPXs it and goes all the way and wins the final because of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
The FPX double-edged sword. Exactly. I know, exactly. That's the example, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
It's insane, but I feel like T1 should win this tournament, and then T1 will go to Worlds and will have a good run at Worlds. But I think going up against 4 potential strong Chinese seeds, that's where China has more of a chance, more odds. But yeah, I think the T1 winner would make sense.
I think there's at least more hope with Noguri playing again, which fixes a lot of T1's issues that they had in the spring split. So I think the field in Korea is going to be more competitive, because like it was just like a 2-horse race, and everybody knew that Gen G was like the shittier horse, right? It really wasn't ultra competitive, but I think that hopefully the return of Noguri and Damwon, getting him back, hopefully having that power in the top lane again, will turn them into a real threat, so that Korea can have multiple teams that could, in theory, at Worlds. Because right now, if you took it as it is, yeah, I agree that China's significantly more threatening.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so too. Just I want a sick tournament. I think so many fans get so invested in like who actually wins in the end, but even the fact that I'm casting the LPL, for me, I just want to bang a tournament. Like, it's not getting worked up over who gets the trophy at the end. I know obviously fans are passionate about that and stuff, but I just want to see sick League Legends.
Good take. Well, I think that'll do it. We've put our predictions in. Thank you very much for joining us, Ox. Thor and I are going to take some viewer questions, but we'll come back after just a little break, and we'll see you then.
Right, we're back for the viewer questions, which is obviously mechanized by the Grog coin. And you know what? Listen, we've all been hit. It's hard times for everyone, but the questions are still going to roll in. They haven't been de-inflated or anything. So, if anything, it's the other way around. Buy the dip.
Yeah.
Get yourself some Grog coin. Get some questions.
It's cheaper than ever to have 25 Grog coin, which you guys should all join the Insight on Esports Discord to talk about your favorite games. But if you go to the Grog
you can ask questions
channel,
forever once you get them.
yeah, and you can sell them. So if you go to the Grog coin channel, there's a pinned post that'll tell you how to get your 25 Grog coin. We actually have had a pretty big influx of new viewer questions. So yes, at a certain point, there may be too many questions for every episode. We will find out. We are not at that point yet. So Rump Roast Baster 420, of course. We have to have all the iterations. We are in an alternate universe on the current MSI patch. You and Thorin have been tasked with using a time machine to bring together the best MSI teams throughout history into this tournament. Which 6 teams from MSI past and present do you bring? Assuming players can obviously play the current patch.
Duplicate.
Yeah.
All right, I thought you were going to...
G2, obviously.
G2's an obvious one. 2018 RNG, maybe.
Sure.
That was a pretty banger one. Let me think. Who else are we going with here?
I would bring the good version of TL as well, just because it's more fun when you have a good NA team in the mix. And I hated the version of
we can take teams that didn't win as well. We're not just picking the best teams. It's just our choice of teams to make it fun, right? I see.
So I wouldn't bring the CLG that made the finals because I actually fucking hated that roster. So,
by the way, the TL team actually might even be good. They were like a fucking late game team with the jungle and that. Like, that would even probably work with the meta. Well, if we could just take anyone, let's obviously bring IG as well. I mean, they just make any tournament more fun, don't they? There's one. We've got to take some Korean team, surely.
Damwon, maybe. I think the like a good version of Damwon would be exciting.
Yeah, if they hadn't sort of shit the bed a bit. Because remember, they were supposed to win that tournament. Everyone obviously ignores now, don't they? Yeah. That'd be a pretty banging tournament. Look, we've got fucking IG, G2, TL's even in there. We've got fucking RNG, Damwon. Was that 6?
It was 5 or 6.
Put in one of the team. Pick your T1 and put it in C6 maybe. I don't know. Yeah, you
sure.
That'll be a fucking sick.
Your favorite version of T1.
And by the way, I won't make the obvious joke because it's actually not a joke. Like I can't say that'd be better than any tournament. Yeah, because that's a time machine component involved. Like, listen, I'll blame Riot for a lot of things, Monty. Inability to access time travel technology is not actually one of them. That one, I allow them their temporal fucking inadequacies like the rest of us.
Plus, we would have already known if they had invented time travel because they would have told us all about it, guys. They would have told us all about it.
You know what the joke is? Here's my joke. If Riot invented time travel, they wouldn't like go forwards in the future, find out like how the world becomes next level, bring it back. They would go back and actually they would erase esports history and all non-single elimination round of robin tournaments. And then by definition, their tournament, because remember, they have to always be right money. They have to even double down through time. Theirs by definition would be the best format and the only one in esports. And they would have invented esports. I actually genuinely believe that's the angle for Riot of the time machine, you know.
For Thorin, favorite / least favorite NBA players currently playing. Not for me because I don't know any shit about the NBA guys. So
easy. So if I'm going to go with least favorite, it's been this for about fucking 6 or 7 years. Russell Westbrook, he is a fucking bomb. You will never win if you have Russell Westbrook, I guarantee. Because here's the problem. Essentially, right? First of all, he's getting older now. But even when he was in his prime, the problem he had was this. Basically, he's a point guard, but traditionally he probably should. He thinks he should be a shooting guard. He's not actually good enough at shooting. He should have just been a real point guard. He actually had amazing athleticism, and if he just passed more, his teams would have been very, very good, and he would have stuck with some of the stars. And he might even have won by now. But he is the guy who just decided, like, it doesn't matter what my shooting percentage is, I'm just shooting this motherfucker. That's great when it goes in and you win. When it doesn't, by the way, like all the great champions say, you're supposed to take responsibility. I don't think he ever did that personally. Favorite one, I'm going to take someone like, the problem is, traditionally, if I'm saying favorite, I have to take like someone who's had a long career. I can't take the new school people. So like, if of the people currently playing, I actually wouldn't, by the way, take like a big superstar player. I would actually just take fucking DeMar DeRozan, who's not a superstar player, he's just a good star at this point. Just because if you like old school 2-point mid-range game, he is the best in the game. So he's the throwback player who plays that way. If I had to pick like a new school person, he might even win now. Easily Tatum. I think Tatum for the Celtics is a mega player. He's got amazing frame, a really good shooter. Seems like he has the mentality to be a champion. There's a few.
There you go. Historian questions to the guys who have been here forever. I've been here since 2011, so no Brood War to recall. Has there been any non-Korean team / player winning a Korean event aside from Envy and Apex Season 1? No, that was actually an incredible. So let me put it differently. There was a Vainglory team in a tournament that I casted that won a season in Korea that was a Western roster, but I wouldn't consider obviously Vainglory a tier 1 esport. So if we're talking about tier 1 major international competitions, then Envy winning Apex Season 1 was the first time a foreigner team had won. Now, there had been foreigners. Like, obviously, in the early days of Brood War, there were foreigner winners that came over. So, like, Gur famously within Brood War. In fact, many of the early winners of Brood War were Westerners. But as a team, in team-based esports, it was Envy in Apex Season 1 was the first time that had ever been done in a major.
Yes.
Which league champion do you most enjoy watching the top pros pilot? And is there a favorite player that you enjoy that pilots that champion? That's a good question.
Ooh, that's a good one. What is it at the moment, Monty? It doesn't have to be in this meta, obviously. Is there just one that's?
I mean, all time, like, because I'm a jungle aficionado. All time, it has to be Lee Sin, I think, just because of the number of different kinds of plays you can make on the champion. Because there's several factors to consider when it says enjoy watching top pros pilot. There has to be a history of players playing this champion at the top level, because you have to have a point of comparison over time. So it has to be one of like the most durable champions in the history of League of Legends, and that narrows the pool considerably to certain junglers like Lee Sin, certain control mages like Orianna, Azir, probably since release, certain AD carries that have been very popular over the years. Not probably very many, if any, top laners. Like, because a lot of the top laners from early in League of Legends really aren't just played anymore. It could be a mid laner like LeBlanc as well that has a great history, or an assassin such as Zed. Could be in the AD carry role, could be something like Ezreal. So I think for me, it's Lee Sin. And so you have to think about, the breakout stars that have played Lee Sin over the years. I think, I enjoy watching Owner play Lee Sin. He had a fantastic game. He's had a couple fantastic games in the last few days. Historically, obviously, Insec really invented kind of the way you play modern Lee Sin. So I enjoy it because Lee Sin offers individual playmaking ability, high mechanical plays, intelligent pathing decisions, early game dueling potential, coupled with late game teamfight playmaking potential that is very reliant on the skill of the individual Lee Sin player in order to find those openings. So that's my answer.
It's based on the fact that it's the champion and it's the player that follows that. It's not the other way around. It's not the player and then you pick the champion. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me think what angle I want to go with this then. Because I'm trying to think, what are the really entertaining ones I enjoy watching? I mean, I really do like when people have like the super like outplay mid laners. Like in the modern day, I actually quite like Silas. Even though I think in game to play against it is pure cancer. But obviously that's why it's amazing when the fucking sick players have it and they go mental on it, isn't it? So like I actually might even I'll take Knight on Silas. I think he is a fucking monster on that champion. I've always loved play. That's the sort of player I want to see just take over a game.
Yeah, so champions, like, as much as you might hate Viego and Silas, because they can mimic other champions' kits, it also tests the individual ability of that player to play other things or to create, have good decisions about what they're doing. I mean, Zoe's another one, honestly. But yeah, I think
that's
Silas
why I also watching Knight play, because there's the thing that's underrated. Like it's like with the comment we talk about on the fucking live viewing. The thing that's underrated about those two champions is you keep watching on the West where like really good players play it. It's like, oh, it's pretty good. It's like, now imagine a player playing who has an enormous champion pool ocean, and actually the joke is he's better at the champion you're playing than you are, but he's Silas as well. That's why it's OP as fuck. Spoiler, that's why the joke right now would even be put caps on that. Let's see what he can do. That's your chance to win some games. You know what I mean? I'll think of another one, because I'll do two. You did a bunch. I'll do one more. Let me think. What's another one I really enjoy to watch? Even though people are going to think this is a boomer shout out, if you're new from this era, you know that this was fucking cash money anytime. It's not even my favorite champion, but this guy, when he played it, did make it one. Anytime Madlife picks fucking Blitzcrank, it is game on. Because if people don't know, it wasn't even just the normal Blitzcrank shit. The amount of blind ones he would hit was like, it's like, that's why we called him a god, essentially. It was like he just had wall hack, no fucking fog of war. He would just hit the craziest blind pulls you've ever seen. And then that's why it's just so hard to beat their team.
Yeah, Thresh is probably the greatest support champion of all time. Also, if we're gonna go for like, I mean, Mad Life Blitz was insane, but if you're looking at like, you know, historical points of comparison that are frequently in the meta, Thresh would be another really good one. Support. Excellent. On the last 2 episodes, Monty has heavily emphasized what a failure Team Liquid had and not in spring by not winning. Is Team TL a team full of washed boomers, and could we have seen this coming? Well, we didn't know how good Bjergsen was. Like, by all accounts, he was practicing pretty heavily even while he was coaching, at least in terms of being at, you know, in solo queue. The rest of his teammates, obviously, like Ansama, super good. Core, super good.
Some of the best players in the league.
Yeah. They had, you know, I guess, you know, Santorin's a known quantity, right? Whippo, very good. So I don't know if we could have seen it coming. Especially at NA, you would have thought that they could just simply just manhandle the region. Keep in mind that in the last 2 years before...
It's a massive reach. Basically, maybe you could say Bjergsen's a wash, but the rest of them you definitely cannot. Like, they are not in any way.
Yeah. Keep in mind that in the last 2 years before Spring Split, only Bjergsen had won a domestic title, which he followed up with his historic 0-6. And also, he nearly lost in every single game of the lower bracket in the playoffs, because they won in all those, like, 5th games, right? And only Core and Bjergsen had been first-team All-Pros in the region. First off, All-Pro is stupid. So... yeah, I mean, that is an argument that you could make, but it's kind of interesting that Hansama, I guess, wasn't an all-pro in his region, considering that he was definitely, at times, one of, if not the top 80 carry in Europe. Also, Bwipo was playing a different role for part of the time leading up into Team Liquid, so I guess that could have been a consideration.
Yeah, you've got to give him a little bit of time to ramp up again, sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, the project isn't a failure if they do well in summer. Like, if they go to Worlds and make it out of groups, like, nobody's gonna give a shit what happens. Can we all congratulate Riot for managing to close the gap by injecting artificial 35 pings that fuck over Koreans, adding a ridiculous bounty system that negates early game leads, and forcing back-to-back best of ones for the most upset potential? It is terrible, guys. I don't know what to say. It's just so badly designed. It's just a laughable event, truly. Look, I'm just glad people are finally waking up to the fact that these formats are garbage. Like, I spent, 10 years of my life. I've spent a fucking decade of my life, guys, trying to get somebody to fucking listen to me about this, so thank you for finally doing it. What is the non-esports razor cake you find yourself eating over and over?
Are you even asking me that? You're aware I'm a fan of Aaron Rodgers, right? Are you aware of that? Listen, obviously it's the team, the Packers in that sense. I'm not one of the people who thinks he's just choking it. Like, mate, if people aren't aware, minus this last playoff game, I think he had 30 points in every single fucking playoff game he'd ever played in. And that he had like fucking 1 ring ever. Like, imagine that every year. Oh, I hope it's a good game. Well, scoring points, lose again. Oh, fucking interception. Oh, defense flew it. Oh, this fucking guy just did it. Lined up offside. Like, oh, I can't handle it. Every year it's something new. Because the worst part about American football, this is actually the part I actually feel sorry for people who take it too seriously, is it is by definition probably the most complicated, most moving parts, variables. You don't even have one fucking coach. You have coaches for the separate parts of the games. And there is so much detail that, like, essentially half the complaints about GMs are just complaints about American football being too complicated. You can't have the best players at every position with a salary cap. So every team has some flaws, and it means that basically there's always ways you can lose no matter how well things are going. No matter how well they're going, mate.
It says
razor cake.
It says non-esports razor cake, but I'm just gonna say this is technically an esports razor cake, but it's not about team performance. It's just the fact that it's about the industry and the business of this industry, where I constantly think that it's going to get better, or like this new thing is going to work out, and like finally somebody's giving me control of something, and then inevitably it gets fucked up for really stupid reasons that are outside of my control. But I keep eating that razor cake, so there you go. Keep doing it. After the victory of EG and 100 Thieves last split, it would seem that having a cohesive team is more important than just having the best talent in NA. Do you agree with this? If so, would you say having the best mid in NA is overrated compared to other regions?
The problem was the last part.
Yeah.
Like, I will always think, beyond very rare exceptions which prove the rule, having the best mid is the number one starting block to be the best team. But I agree with the cohesive point. I would say generally, I have a principle I say in CSGO, and I think it applies in League of Legends. The flaw is this. People start with their foundation of a team as skill individually, and they stack players. Actually, I think the most important quality, first and foremost, is to have team cohesion. We're all on the same page. We all understand how to play. The problem is this. I always say in CSGO, and FaZe Clan, who just won the major, fits this to a T. They're not the most skilled team in the world, but they have just enough skill in all the positions you need to make the rest of it make them the best.
Yeah, I think the whole.
You see the same.
I think it's true in any sport, though. It's not just it's true in any sport and in any esport, right? It's not necessarily just in NA. It's that the NA. I think many of the NA GMs over the years have been able to do well in NA simply by stacking great players that have low synergy or like different ideas about how to play the game because the region is weak. And then when they're exposed to actual good teams that have synergy and have cohesion, then they get destroyed. So I think maybe they're just catching up to knowledge that other teams have had.
I'll even give you a cool angle as well. If a team has an identity and it sticks to it and the players play for that and the right players, even when you lose, it can be fucking amazing, right, Monty? It can be epic games.
Sure.
It makes it fun. Like I'm kind of like Ox said earlier. I root for good games. Then after the fact, I want my team to win. I want the good game first. Always.
What game statistic would you want most to see for any sport? If there was a stat that you could have, that I would want to see. I mean, I can do this for League of Legends. Like, I would like Riot to give us the stats that they have. Like, for example, they have access to things like jungle proximity. I don't have access to things like jungle proximity. Why can't they make statistical information available to everybody by just putting a downloadable spreadsheet? Because here's the thing about Riot, guys. They have spreadsheets of all this information that they give to their casters. There are giant spreadsheets. I have gotten them in the past when I've worked at Riot events. Just put them available on your fucking website, dude. Just make it so I can download it so that you have information about the game, so that people can create content about these statistics that you can't get via the API as it stands currently. I would love to have actually available full statistics. Why can't we, as fans, get the replays? Why can't we, as fans, get the stats in order to make content? Why is it fucking secret? Why are replays secret in League of Legends? Why won't you just put them on the website? It's insane.
I've got an angle and I'm going to cheat, but you're going to see why. And this is something I've always wanted, Monty, and it will change the whole industry tomorrow. All the bullshit would evaporate and float away. So it's basically, I'm going to explain it by very briefly explaining something to fans who don't know CSGO. So in CSGO, you might not know this. In fact, even CSGO fans might not. My actual rival, I obviously don't have one. I've done about 10,000 more videos and content than any fucking other person ever. Then on the side, I worked like 4 other jobs. Like, see what I'm doing right now? This wasn't even my job, you idiots. It's some broadcast shit. I was the guy tapping on keyboards, doing fucking solo videos. But anyway, right, in my career, it was originally when we were both journalists, Carmack, right, of ESL. And then it just so happened that then with ESL, he had all these tournaments in his home country of Poland, and he kept bragging every time about the bloody Kanavit server and Spodek and all. And all I'll say is this: the question I asked him every single year that he never, ever answered is the question and the stat that I want in esports, and it would solve it all, Monty. When he would brag and go, there are 8,000 fans here. Wow, the fans are so passionate here. Wow, people queuing around the block to come into the sport deck. I asked him the question that exists in every combat sport. Just tell me what the gate was, Carmack. I want to know how much money was made from the tickets you sold to that venue. Spoiler, the reason I asked it that way is because there'd be years where it would be something pathetic, like a few thousand, fucking $30,000, $10,000 or something. So suddenly that wouldn't seem like a big sporting event. Oh, so I want to know for Worlds, I want to know for TI, I want to know how much you actually making off these tickets. Are you making? Because if you don't know, by the way, tickets are so high in the UFC, they might only have like 15,000 people, but the gate could be millions because the ticket's that expensive. So that in the sports and entertainment world would very quickly tell me if these orgs are $400 billion. Like, let's see what these worlds are like. That'll be a very interesting stat.
So I actually, at least for the LCS finals, the tickets were actually pretty expensive, like $50 to $100 a seat. So I think Riot actually is probably making a decent amount now from tickets.
Nice to know, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I would just love to know the ultimate stat, which is how much money from the developers does esports actually make? Show me the average spend of an esports fan on their League of Legends account or on their CS account compared to a non-esports watching fan. And they have this data because people log into the website for drops, and we can just see if you are receiving drops, do you have an average higher spend? Because that will actually tell us if esports is making money or not. And I think it is. The devs are just hiding it. I think they're just hiding it. What are your favorite methods of monetizing your haters? Well, clicking on the shows for one. I mean, that's the easy one. We're not even doing the greatest job of monetizing the haters. If Thorin really wanted to monetize the haters, he would link up a sponsor with doing things for, like, if you buy X from this sponsor, if you do then I will do this
on me or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
I will do something like humiliating for myself, or I will say Brazil is the greatest. I will make a video praising all the great things about Brazil, but you have to buy this much. You have to buy this much. I will go to the next major, and I will hold a fuck Thorin sign at the major if you buy X amount from the sponsor. That is the genius way to monetize your hate.
I would just say my career is the best way you can monetize haters. Because if people don't know, I once said this years ago, I grinded away in the content fucking mines, just trying to make the best content. In fact, almost the best content, like divorced of me, like historical stuff, try and collate history, try and remind people of things, draw in disparate communities, research communities that no one knows about. And what I found was, like, I found validation in it, did fuck off my career. Then what I did was I just crafted my personality around that, and I sold my personality. And so if you notice, it's every single comment thread. You know this. Doesn't matter what the content is. Could be a 4-hour interview with fucking Upset. Could be a video where I reveal what's going on in Team Liquid coaching staff. It could be a video where I talk about rookies actually better than Faker and I explain why. It could be a video pointing about, like, what's Riot going to do in terms of, like, the league structure. No matter what it is, 90% of the comments, which otherwise wouldn't be anything because no one watches comments and content and actually discusses it, it's just about who I am, everything I have or haven't done, whether that was right, how I am as a person, evaluating my life and my soul, then looking at, like, arguments between, like, was this, and the drama, like the soap opera is actually essentially what's put my career where it is. I know it sounds mad to people because they're so stupid, and this is how successful I was. It's so good at it, Monty, that they always tell me that's all you did was make tweets. The joke is I did 120k tweets and 10,000 pieces of content. Find me someone who did 2,000 pieces of content, and then we'll look at their tweets.
Yep.
Not bad.
All right. What is the most efficient?
Comments in the description box. Comments in the comment section below about why I'm wrong.
Yep. And then you'll boost the YouTube algorithm for the content. So good job.
There you go.
What is the most efficient way to support the decision of a person or org? Should I watch all of the team's games, buy their merch directly? Like with TSM, should I stop watching their games? Watching their games really isn't going to have much of an effect, guys. So the big problem with esports monetization, one of the big problems, is that, like, the average sports fan spends like $50 or $60 a year on sports, whereas the average esports fan spends something like $5. So the problem is that the fans actually just get it for free and don't spend any money. I think the best way you can support your favorite orgs or content is to, or streamers or whatever, subscribe on Twitch to your favorite streamers, right? But honestly, with esports orgs, it's probably buy their merch. Is the best way to do it. Buying merch is actually enormously helpful for the esports orgs. That is, I think, the number one way you can support orgs that you like.
I'd say the side one is probably if they ever do, like, you know, a fan meetup or some shit where you can go and pay and go to watch parties.
Yes.
That just helps with the sponsorship, like just what it looks like, not directly financially as much, but it'll help them get their sponsors and show the activation. By the way, even just that, I know it sounds whack, but just participate in activations.
Yes.
If they do something, hey, with this sponsor, we're doing this thing, reply to it, enter, oh, here's my funny joke about that. That stuff helps. They read that stuff.
Or if you buy one of the products, then reply to one of the tweets about that product with like a picture of you, picture of you with the product or whatever, telling them how much you had. That actually does make a massive difference.
Their marketing department's going to take examples that they'll love that. Yeah.
And honestly, the team will also take that and they will put it in like a marketing deck for like renewing that sponsor and be like, look, these people liked it. Yeah, it is helpful. Riot allegedly used to have a part of the screening process for hires where they would ask about people's thoughts on Richard about Monty's casting compared to someone else. They did do this 100%. I have had multiple people who have been in Riot interviews tell me directly that they did this. Do you think that Riot and all of CSGO now have a similar situation where they ask if you've ever appeared on Thorin's content? No, I don't think so.
Here's the thing. I'll actually give credit to Riot for this. I'm not giving you that much because you'll see why there's an entirely ulterior, selfish motive as to why. Right? Everyone is so stupid in League because they do that thing, Monty, where they automatically accede to authority. And since Riot, by definition, is the full legal authority in the game, they just assume on some level, well, it is Riot's game. If you don't like it, get the fuck out. So they act like Riot is, it's totally justified that they do anything, as though the law actually goes above and beyond like life and itself and creativity. But one thing Riot does allow actually is people to come from my content and then be on their streams. Spoiler, I'm essentially for free, just fucking finding talent for them, crafting talent for them, fielding talent, getting them popular, building it, and then they take them at the end. Oh, thank you so much. How magnanimous of you.
Sorry, here's the rest of the question. Ask if you have appeared on Thorin's content, and then if you say yes, you immediately get sent to the biggest event possible and become the new face of your job. So actually, the answer is yes in many cases. Like look at Maui Snake for this last one, or Potter, for Valorant and CS:GO. Yeah, oftentimes appearing on Thorin's content does have a direct line into becoming a major figure on the scene.
I mean, I did indirectly ruin G4, but whatever, it was ruined anyway, wasn't it? Right, here's the one thing I would say, though. The point is, though, that's actually also one of the secrets I discovered about esports, is why we're doing this company now. The secret is this. Nobody gives a fuck about your ideas. Nobody gives a fuck about what you would like to do, what you're going to do, what you could do. They only care about what you've done already, and once you've done it and actually shown them it works conclusively, then they're on board, and they were always on board, and why can't we be a part of it, and can we work with you? So the joke is, that's all I'm doing with this talent. I'm just showing you, look, this guy's fucking sick. Let's set him up on the convo. Yeah, he's obviously, you hire him. There you go. So that's essentially the secret of esports, that you can't wait for people to give you a shot. You got to just do it. And then afterwards, they all follow suit, don't they, if it works. Like everyone's genius once they've seen it work.
Do you think the esports industry and even the whole gaming and entertainment industry as a whole will ever be able to eject dirty/bloodstained money from their ecosystem while finding other sustainable methods of profit? So the problem with this is that sports can't do it. Sports can't do it. So if sports can't do it, I doubt esports is going to be able to do it. And
so I'll tell you, Monty, the dirtiest. I'll give you an example. The dirtiest example of fans complaining about something in a bullshit manner, like you know this, but it triggers the fuck out of all soccer fans, is the whole European Super League, right? Even though I actually do understand, there are some valid reasons why you wouldn't. Like, for example, some of the teams wouldn't actually have been the most competitive teams, and they would have been like not as good, and it would have made it like an LCS scenario where maybe there's a team in an ERL situation who's better. That's true. For pure competitive angles, it was worse. But here's the reason, here's the bullshit angle they took, Monty. They listed a bunch of things that are not economic factors, like, my dad grew up supporting that team, or like, hey, this is an unfair way because you guys will just make all the money and then all the rest of us will make nothing. You know, the only reason the Premier League, when I was a boy, Monty, that wasn't the best league in the world. It was like Serie A. And then at one point it was La Liga from Spain. The reason the Premier League is the best league in the world now is because the most evil rich people in the world came and said, I don't care about making money. Throw enough money at the wall until my team is a champion. And in my lifetime, teams went from the middle of the table to the most dominant teams in the whole fucking Premier League. It was all with bloodstained money, with corrupt people, with fuckers that don't even want it as a business. So the joke there is like, hey, leave it as it is. It's fine now, as Czechs war, Daddy Warbucks feel. What are you talking about, you idiots? Like, so I think already, like, unfortunately, spoiler, that's going to be the most obvious way esports will get big. It just is. That's kind of the horse we're going to have to ride, I'm afraid. It just means for people like us, it'll be a little bit trickier, but the rest of them don't mind.
Let me explain this to you guys. Sports is a bad business. And what I mean by bad business is that the value of a sports team is, in terms of the revenue multiple, is actually very low. So like a normal business, the value of that business is a multiplier based on the revenue that business makes. Now, in sports, the franchises are worth way more money than the revenue they make would imply, because they are an exclusive toy for very, very wealthy billionaires. Okay, because there's only a certain number of sports teams you can buy. And so this increases their value artificially when it comes to a business. You'll notice that most of the wealthiest professional sports owners have a very successful business career, and then they go and buy a sports team for fun. The people who started, who are now even billionaires from owning sports teams, and that's their primary business, are among the poorest teams in sports, at least in America. Like, you look at the legacy NFL teams, like, let's take the Raiders, a family-owned team. The Raiders are one of the poorest and kind of most poorly run NFL teams that exist because they don't have outside money. They're not, there's not a billionaire coming in with an insane portfolio like, what happened with Paul Allen and the Seattle Seahawks, who comes in with all this Microsoft money and then injects it into the team, right? So that's the problem, guys. That's the problem. And I think this is true of most sports. So in that scenario, you're always going to get this power dynamic where it is a fun thing for people to do. And ultimately, esports is at a point where very rich people whose kids are into esports, and trust me, guys, I've seen this, people buy esports teams for their kids to have toys. This is a thing that has begun happening, especially in the franchise era of esports. It is
technically even Rick Fox did it.
Yeah, well,
technically,
because he wanted to play. He wanted to play with his son. I mean, he said that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's true.
And it's not like Rick Fox is a bad guy, but I'm just saying, like, this is something that rich people do. Okay, so I don't think that there is really a way out of this conundrum because, again, sports teams are bad businesses and sports teams make money. They actually are functional profit-making enterprises. Esports teams lose money and they're overvalued. So what are you going to do? Like, it's a bad situation. And until esports gets big enough to be more self-sustaining, this problem's going to continue. It's already probably too late.
There's also an obvious buck that you've just passed along there you haven't really thought about. So you know what my follow-up question to him would be? How much you spent on esports recently?
Yep.
How much you spend to watch a tournament? Because as long as the answer's 0, I don't think you can really be too picky about who comes in and provides you an enormous $1 million tournament.
The problem is dirty money is the only money, guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, you guys have to choose to support esports financially, and if you're not doing it, well, then here we go. It's going to be sustained, but not by things you like, most likely.
Yes.
How would a team of LS disciples do? Fudge, Malice, Nemesis, Crownshot, and Selfie role swap to support. Hilariously, I don't know, bad. I don't know. The weird thing about LS is like he like picks players who are sort of, they're like kind of good, but not like the best in their roles, and then he just latches onto them for whatever reason. I don't really understand it. I don't really understand his selection criteria.
And even worse, I think I know why he does it, Monty. Not only because he's friends with him, obviously, but there's this angle that I do think is mad. It allows him to, because this is the mechanism. It's going to blow your minds when you think about this. Because he then knows more about them than you, and maybe he even sees them like in Korean boot camps where you're not seeing him, he can always use his hipster angle to go, you know what? Fudge isn't just good, he's secretly the best Western player. And you're like, no, he isn't. He goes, you don't know the things I know, and you haven't seen the games. It's the ultimate, like, it's because it's defensible, it's got plausible deniability. Because that's the one I've never gotten. It's what made me figure that out, Monty, was the Nemesis.
The Nemesis one is wild.
I love mid laners. I even love boring mage mid laners. I don't get what he thinks is monstrous about this guy. I don't get it at all. I can't wrap my head around it at all, mate. I don't get it. It must be some secret reason. I don't get it myself. So the problem is, I expect it would be as you'd imagine. Obviously, it'd be mega underwhelming compared to the hype of it, wouldn't it? Like, it'd be brilliant in theory. The joke is, this is why it's sad he never really could coach for a whole split with real players he wants. Here's the thing. I do believe LS can draft his draft philosophy. I do not believe he could draft his philosophy and also make all of the players he likes happy. There, you notice that one? Because he'd draft for them, wouldn't he? Well, how's that going to work with 5 of them in one team? So I think that would be the problem. I don't think it'd be as good as you think. It sounds funny on paper, it probably wouldn't be that good in practice, would it?
Okay. Has franchising League of Legends been for better or for worse? Do you like franchising as a concept? Well, I think you can see that Riot thinks it's been for worse because Riot has announced that they're not going to do it, at least at this point in Valorant. I think franchising isn't necessarily bad, but you have to have the right group of teams. And I think Riot didn't create motivation for teams to spend money. And the other half of it is when teams buy in, they have to be confident that you're using the money that they spent to buy into the league.
Yes.
To do good things. And so if we look at what franchising has done, I think we can say it's been pretty successful in the LEC overall because it's produced very competitive teams at an international level. Yeah, there are some bottom feeders, but also the franchise fees went to creating a good product that has gained viewership and fans because the LEC rebranded. They spent a lot of money like making all this content. The problem with LCS is that LCS has massively decreased in viewership. It has done nothing in terms of quality over the number of years. So if I'm in NA, why the fuck am I going to spend money if I'm a franchise team? Because Riot themselves has mishandled the money that we gave them in order to franchise by being bad at creating an LCS product and the viewership on the decline. So I do think that there are cases you can make where you think where franchising is good, because you have to have people who have some level of business stability, because what franchising does, and I will tell you this as somebody who owned a team in the pre-franchising era, it was extremely difficult to get sponsorships because the sponsors will lowball you, because it was like, even if you're the best team, everybody had this problem. You could have been the number one team in League of Legends and they'll be like, but what if you get relegated? We can't invest that money. Or we have to do less, because you can get, it's a negotiating tactic that the sponsors use constantly against you, which prevents you from getting good sponsorships or long-term multi-year deals. So it provides stability for the teams, and the teams need this stability to make money, because remember, they don't get media rights deals like they do in sports. The sponsorships are the only money they have. So they have to have the stability of this franchising to make cash.
For me, the main problem is just their LEC specifically, because I always watch that every year. This is my problem. I actually do think at the top level, it's maybe even why you could have the G2 super team. They have the funds to do it. It's the time to strike while the iron's hot, blah, blah. So I think for the top teams, it might even be why LEC produced like Fnatic and G2 that will go to World's Finals. The downside is this. I think if you look at the bottom of the LEC, there are very few splits ever where there wasn't like a team in franchising who was in the RLs who was better or had better players, or who would have forced their way in and beaten some of the bottom feeders, the Astralises of the world. So I won't even say SKX, actually, they usually overperform, you know, like the teams that have been the not that great ones at the bottom overall. So like, that's the angle. For competitive integrity, I do think it's taken a hit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be problematic for sure. The problem is that it's also the fact that the teams are not really buying into a sports product, right? The thing about franchising in traditional sports is that the teams own the league in franchising, right? So that means that the teams themselves, when they are part of this league, and when a new owner buys a franchise, they are getting a seat at the table in order to do things like select the commissioner of the league, you know, have voting power on rules, and like be able to actually set out everything in the way the league is run and managed, set out the way revenue is distributed. The problem with buying into these franchises is, what are you buying? You're buying no power. There is no franchise league in the world in esports where the owners can vote on the commissioner of that product, which means that the developers install that commissioner, which means that the commissioner is then their first and only concern is the developer, and then it's a marketing product and not a sports product. So as a team, you really have no power over what's going on. And it's in your best interest to create the most compelling sports product, but it's in the developer's best interest to create the most effective marketing product. And that problem is the core issue of developer-run esports, and why, you know, franchising is probably a bad idea, because the owners want to buy in for one reason, and then the actual league is operated in a way that isn't in their best interest and cannot ever be in their best interest because they have no power. So
just go and look in CSGO if you want to see what I was talking about with my point. Essentially, the last few years, there is every single year one or two teams who come in who weren't partner teams. They weren't like the best teams in the world, and they just become like top 5 teams in the world. Last year, it was like egg on the face of people like Blast and ESL that like teams like Heroic and Gambit weren't even all partners teams, saying they were the top 2 teams in the world at one point. Yep. That can't happen in League because of the structure. You're limited. You can't push past the LEC team. In fact, you can't even go into LEC because your org's very likely to buy the spot and just take your 5 players. So if you're a brilliant team underneath who might, for all we know, be the 4th best team in Europe, you just get taken apart. You never get to see that team in the league.
Yeah. So I don't think franchising is bad. I think the way franchising is done is bad. If you had infinite time to study/watch one extra game, what esports title would you add to your current roster? Probably CSGO, obviously. I think for me, we get more into the analysis of it. The best game, I think.
The obvious answer for me, because it's already a game I watch for fun, is Dota. But because I watch it for fun, I just watch the team I like, or the marquee match, or the big final, whatever. I'd like it if I had more time. I could just put in that. If I had like 3 hours in an extra in a day, I'd watch a couple of Dota games for sure.
What is your favorite narrative in esports ruined by fans? Definitely the Bengi narrative. That one. The problem is that I would love to be able to talk about Bengi in a way where we could talk about his strengths, why he was such a unique player, why he was so perfect in his role, how his synergy with Faker. But unfortunately, all I ever get to do is battle with the morons who say he was the greatest jungler of all time. So they absolutely fucking ruined fans ruined the Bengi narrative because it could have been cool, but instead we have to spend all of our time explaining why Bengi wasn't actually the best jungler ever, which is fucking annoying.
To me, it's just the ones where it's like Mount Rushmore type figures who, if you actually, here's the problem. You can do Mount Rushmore if it's like iconic player. That's cool. But it's when they take the iconic player, Monty, and they put him on the Mount Rushmore of like the best. So I'll give you an example. If I asked fans, cover all esports games, pick out your Mount Rushmore, there would be a lot of fans who would put Boxer on their Mount Rushmore. Boxer isn't even a top 5 player to play Brood War, in my opinion. Like,
He was,
I don't think people know
he
this.
was just the first one.
Listen, he was very good at his time, but even then, he didn't win as much as you think, or as long as you think. And actually, he had many years where he was still had that fame propping him up, and he was the one losing and always losing to Isle of Food, to Nada.
He was the worst Bonjour for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And he's just, his problem is he was so charismatic, people just think of the highs. So essentially, and lads, this is the last detail. Too many people never saw him when he was great, and they came along too late, and they tried to get it on the action. Yeah, he's the greatest. You're my favourite player, Boxer, at an MLG. It's like, you can't have possibly ever watched him play. It's 2012. He was playing in fucking 2001 when he was the best. You would have been 3, and it was on Korean TV. But okay, I'm your biggest fan. Like, fuck off, mate. Fuck right off. You know what I mean? That's one I hate, because essentially, there's another really great player, but you've taken him and you've made him too big even in his own game. Because remember, they would try and treat it, Monty, like he's the faker who transcended his game. He's still in his bloody game. Look, marketing wise, a story, yes, but that's why they ruined that narrative. There's one that always tilted me, unfortunately. Because I'll give you an example. He'll never have the same status, but like J-Dong was a much greater Brood War player than fucking Boxer was. Just go watch the games and look at the titles, look at the fucking success. He was a much greater player.
Also, being in the early stages of an esport, even if you are the greatest player in the early stages, like, it's a lot easier to do that. Like, in my mind, guys, esports don't really get rolling until they're probably 3, 4, 5 years into the game, when there's a meta that's developed and you can actually see there's enough players playing it. There's enough points of comparison historically to make about the greatest players. Oftentimes the first generation players get quickly replaced by younger players who have spent who were like 13 when the game came out. And by the time they're like 16 or like super good, like the first generation of players almost never lasts within any esport. I mean, look at Valorant right now. Like, a lot of the players who were, kind of tier 3 CSGO players that moved over are getting kicked out in favor of like newer, younger players. And it's the natural lifestyle cycle of esports. Like, we saw it in Overwatch a couple of years before Overwatch League started. By the time like season 2, season 3 of Overwatch League was around, like, that was an entirely new generation of players. Most of the players who were in the early days of Overwatch didn't really survive into later stages of the game. It's very well known. So for me, saying somebody was the GOAT, like, I can't even think of a player who appeared within like the first, 3 or 4 years of a game that we would consider the GOAT player. Faker. But I mean, he was like three years in.
That was a couple.
He was 2013 and the game had been out since 2009. So have you seen Winning Time, the story of the 80s Lakers on HBO? I have not seen it. I've heard it's pretty good, but I haven't seen it.
Here's the thing. If you treat it as a purely fantasy series, bearing in mind, obviously, they do not have any of these conversations. They just made up what the characters' motivations are. They even have them like on their own thinking and having dreams. Like, if you understand it as a fantasy concept, it's good. It's like a compelling drama with some good elements in it. I will say, just because of the modern day, this is where Game of Thrones ruined TV, mate. Even though it's about the Lakers, it has loads of people having fucking sex in it and stuff, mate. Grow the fuck up, Willie. It's basketball, for God's sake.
Have some dignity. It's basketball.
and then the other thing is this. The problem is this, though. The actual like accuracy of it. Like, look, they fucking take mad creative license. Like, I'll give you an example. When they have Dr. J do his signature dunk in the 1980s, they just make it on Magic Johnson, which it wasn't at all. I think it was on Michael Cooper, just because it's more compelling that it's on the two. They want it to be on the direct protagonist. That's mental, but okay, do that, I guess, if you want. So I would just say that it's not that historically accurate overall, but I will say this. I've always thought that was the most undermined aspect of American culture, and I think they're morons for not doing it. Like, how have they not made a movie where, even if it was with different names, it was like the Shaq and Kobe story or something, the dynamic between them? Where are all the movies about these dynasties? Where's the movie about, like, the fucking Dallas Cowboys of the 90s with Jerry Jones? Like, these movies these storylines have the characters that scream out for a movie and for a cast of some sick person to play that character. So I've always thought it was mad undermined. So yeah, I'm glad it exists. I hope they do more.
Final question for this week. Brazil or Poland?
That's not even hard. It's easy. All you need to know is this. Poland, in reality, I know the real reason they got so mad, Monty. I've told you before. It's because I wasn't Thorin like you know now at that time. And in some ways, it's because actually that experience shaped who I then became. It sort of made me think I've been through the fire now. No point fucking holding back, is there? They already called me every name under the sun and said I'll never work again. Spoiler, I did like 7 world championships after that. Suck my dick. No one else did more. So anyway, since I wasn't Thorin, I didn't get the Charles Barkley pass I get now. You know, now when all those idiots try to list off all the isms and ists I am, and everyone goes, yeah, we know. He's been around for fucking years. Great interview, isn't it? Fuck off. And they all click, right? I didn't have the Charles Barkley pass back then, so that's what wrecked me. So here's what people don't know, Monty. That was the only year ever that Poles actually were that mad about that. After that, I'm not joking. I almost never, I'm not joking, I almost never get a message from a Polish person mad about that, ever. I might have had, after 2014, I might have been like 50 ever. And nowadays, it's the other way, Monty. The majority of messages go like this. Look, I'm Polish, but I don't either. I think, you know, what you were saying was bad, or you made some good points. Or I just don't care. Like, I don't care. By the way, I've had loads of people asking, please come to Katowice, come to the events there.
Yeah.
You know, the difference with Poland is I will never set foot in Brazil in my entire life. I have no interest, and nothing you could say would ever compel me to do otherwise.
Yeah. So Thorin and I are very different people when it comes to travel. I love traveling. I love going to all of these countries. I love seeing the world. I like roughing it. You know, I
you're
go.
Gonna rough it in one of the murder capitals of the fucking world, mate. You're roughing it with a bullet in your head.
I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be okay. But yeah, I enjoy traveling the world. I would love to go to Brazil. I have been in Poland. I actually, yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of Katowice as a city because it's not very fun. There's not a lot to do there. But in terms of other parts of Poland, I think I've had a good time. I've had a great time in Krakow. I think Krakow is beautiful.
Also, Polish women, pretty fire.
There you go.
It's the difference, though. You're all going to go beside Brazilians. First of all, I'm not just all about fat asses. That ain't my shit, mate. And secondly, here's the difference. It's not about how good the look of the women are. It's about the competition, isn't it? Those Brazilians, they're all fucking six-pack, ripped, football. Hey, they've got the vibe. They're into music and that. The Polish guy, I've always told you, looks like a fucking cave troll. I'll fucking compete that all day with my ginger beer. I don't give a fuck, mate. Tell the cave troll to come get me. Be like Lord of the Rings.
Well, with that, that was the last question of the day. We will thank you very much for watching Summoning Insight. We will be back next Tuesday, actually, to wrap up MSI with everything about our thoughts about the hopefully T1 versus RNG final. Guest TBD. We'll see you then.